All righty. All right. Hey, everybody. Hopefully, you can hear me. I feel like every week I have the same issue where I feel like nobody can hear me, but I'm going to assume everybody can. Oh, yeah. It says we're live. Okay. So I am super excited. Welcome back. If this is the replay that you're watching, then welcome. So I'm very, very excited for today's conversation. Oh, my God. Oh, sorry. I'm very excited for today's conversation because I'm going to be having a guest, which is my best friend. If y'all don't know, I always say that I don't really have a whole bunch of friends, but this is one of the two that I have. So I'm very excited. And of course, I have my notes, but I don't have a lot of notes for this particular conversation, but I want to refresh us on where this is coming from. So if you've been tuning in, then you know that for the last couple of weeks, we've been focusing here on just kind of bringing some clarity to what men and women are asking for. So I know that there's a lot of discourse just about like men saying that they want a feminine woman. So then, like, what does that mean? If you ask a lot of people, what does that mean? A lot of times they don't know or they can't communicate it. So we've been really breaking down what are the characteristics of a feminine woman. And so that's kind of what sparked today's conversation. So, just as a refresher, I want to go back over what we said a feminine woman was. Like, what are the requirements of a feminine woman? What are the characteristics of her? And there were 10 things that I went over like 2 weeks ago. And so, just to refresh our memory, because it's going to be pertinent in this conversation, she has good intuition, she's empathetic, she is sensitive, she is charming, she collaborates, she knows how to be vulnerable, she is nurturing, she has style, she's self aware, and she is kind. So I think that's going to be very important in this conversation because, alongside being able to define what these things are for women so that they can check themselves and say, like, okay, I am a feminine woman or I'm not. Maybe these are areas that I can improve upon. Maybe I'm not interested in improving upon these areas. Similarly, for our men, we can say, okay, if you're saying that this is what you want, are you prepared to provide that to her? Like, because with everything that you're asking for, there are requirements on both sides. So, the same way that we can tell women, if you're saying that you want a man that makes six figures, it's going to come with him working long hours. It might come with him being available to multiple people. It might come with him having to work on holidays or on weekends. You're going to have to share him with the world in some capacity because it requires a lot for him to get there. So as a result, you're going to have to deal with certain things. Similarly, for ladies, or for men rather, if you're saying that you want a feminine woman, we understand that men place a lot of importance on their ability to provide and protect. But a lot of the conversation around provision tends to be strictly financial. And today, me and Malia are going to be talking about what it means in totality to provide for this type of woman that y'all are saying that you want. And maybe you do want her. Maybe you are willing to provide all of those things to her, but maybe you're not. And if you're not, you got a question to ask yourself. All right. So I'm going to bring Malia up and I'm super excited. So y'all show us some love in the comments if you're watching. Malia.
Hi. Wow, that pop-up was quick.
I know. It really was. I didn't think it was. I've never had somebody up here before, so I didn't really know what to expect.
This is great. I'm excited.
I'm excited for you to be here. Can you like tell them who you are?
Yes, so I'm Malia. As Kiana mentioned, we've been friends for, we say like 50 years. We're not even 50 years old, but we've been friends since college. And I guess my background, I am a TV and film producer. I live out here in LA, and that's what I do for work. And I am also a motivational speaker. So you can find me at I am Malia Tyler, and also the Mental Block.
Yay. Yeah, so me and Malia actually met in college a long time ago. It's not that long. We act like it's been a long time, but we graduated in
Feels
2016.
longer.
Yeah, we're still in our 20s. But we met back in college, and me and Malia, you know, they say like birds of a feather flock together. Me and Malia are very similar, but we're also very different.
Mm.
And so, but in terms of what y'all say that you want, I think that we have a good understanding of what that is like. Yeah. So but y'all will be able to see throughout the conversation. And we have really great conversations. So naturally, she was the first guest, especially when I think about bringing on a woman. She's my, first choice. So yeah. So I guess, and this conversation was sparked by a conversation that me and her had offline. So
Mhm.
Malia, when you first think about like, are men prepared to provide for a truly feminine woman? What are your first thoughts?
Hmm. I would say the men that I've come across, I'll keep it like that, prior to me getting into a relationship, were not ready for a truly feminine woman. I think that there's this idea of a very superficial idea of what a feminine woman is. And a lot of times we just think about it just from like a physical perspective and, you know, how entertainment shows them as being kind of like aloof and just like at the beck and call of a man, just type of very just like that type of sort of persona. And I think that with that, men really haven't prepared themselves for like a true version of a feminine woman, if that makes sense. So like to the different characteristics that you mentioned of what an actual feminine woman is, um, I'm not sure if men are prepared to handle
Yeah.
that.
I think that when I had the original conversation about like what a feminine woman was, and going through all of them, like literally while I was explaining them, I came to the conclusion and I was like, I don't even think that feminine is the word that men like when men say that they want a feminine woman, I think that they're potentially using the wrong word. I think that
Mhm,
they're describing something that is one of the components or one of the characteristics of a feminine woman, which is vulnerability. But I don't think
mhm,
that they think about femininity in terms of a whole thing that's multi-tiered. So I think when
mhm,
they talk about a feminine woman, they want someone who is not, oh, I can do everything for myself. I don't need no man. That's vulnerability.
mhm,
The I someone they understand that she's probably going to be emotional, but they want her to still be like strong through her emotion. They want her to
mhm,
be able to like because they don't want to deal with the emotional support part a lot of the
right,
time. Um I think that and respect tends to be what they want, which I think is a function of femininity, but it's
mhm.
not inclusive of all that it is. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think also too, they're sort of gauging it as like a contrast to like what we're seeing once again, like on social media. So right now there's a lot of women that are very vocal about their sexuality, very vocal about the demands that they want from men. And
Mm,
so I think a lot of men are now coming out as saying like, a lot of these girls are acting like the homeboy or they're being like way too aggressive. So their response to that is, I want someone that's feminine. I want someone that's soft. I want someone that um quote unquote lets a man be a man. And
mhm,
so I think that that's kind of like what culture that we're in right now, because a lot of women are becoming more dominant in the needs that they want. And I think that a lot of men are not used to that.
mm,
Um, so I just think both sides need to have a better understanding of like what works for them in a relationship where one party, doesn't what's the word? Doesn't emasculate the other.
Yeah, and I know I've heard a lot of men complain about that, feeling emasculated within relationships or when dealing with these, like, as they say, modern women. Um,
Mhm.
oh, hey, Alan. Alan's here. Um, yeah, so I've heard that as a complaint a lot of the time. And I think that, so like, I'm going to ask you, what do you think are some of the areas where men are not necessarily prepared to provide for one of the characteristics of a feminine woman or something that a feminine woman would require.
And so you're saying what area does a man lacking that wouldn't be
Yeah,
able to?
so like because and initially you were saying that, like, coming in when I first asked like what are your perceptions initially,
Right.
um was, and you said no, like probably not. And what
Yeah.
areas do you think that they're not necessarily prepared to provide for a feminine woman?
For me, I would say emotionally.
Mm.
I think that in order for a woman to really tap into her true sort of femininity, it requires one, the woman to be vulnerable, and two, for the man to be able to receive that in a healthy way. So if the man is not prepared to, have healthy dialogue, to have patience, to be able to support a woman that can totally be free, that can totally be sensitive, then, like, speaking for myself personally, that would make me not really want to be feminine all the time, because I feel like I have to have this hard exterior because my man is not able to protect me or is not able to help me to talk through whatever I'm going through. So I think that, and to be able to do that, that requires the man to be able to have some self-awareness about himself, because I feel like he can't help his partner, if it's a woman, if he does not have a clear understanding of himself. So I feel like that's like the first step, and that's probably like the biggest thing for me, would be like from the emotional standpoint. I see a lack there.
Yeah, I know a lot of women talk about that, where their partner isn't necessarily equipped to hold space for them in times where they're not necessarily emotionally strong. I think one of the sort of drawbacks to Black women in particular, because part of our stereotype is that we're very strong, it can be a bit off-putting when men see women that aren't necessarily stoic or like hard all the time or like always together. I think
Yeah.
that for a lot of, especially if you're a boy or a man that grew up in a single parent household with a mom, she didn't
Hmm.
have space to be broken at any time or to express emotion or to express that she's not okay, because there wasn't room for that. Like, she had children to raise, she had to work, she had to do all these different things. And
Right.
so there are, I'm sure, a lot of men that didn't see that side. Their mom was like, and of course, there were some moms that didn't do a good job, but I think that there were a lot of moms that men saw that she's superwoman. And so then you kind of have those expectations for your partner as well, that like, if she, if my mom could do this, then she should be able to do this too. Like, my mom had this odd stacked against her and this odd stacked against her, and she was still able to pull it together. So like, you need to
Right.
be able to pull it together too. And because I'm a man and I'm able to pull it together, you should be able to pull it together too. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and it's something that I've experienced firsthand, in a previous relationship that I was in. Um, you know, like, I'm the type of person that has always like presented myself as having it together, whether it be like, having businesses or in school or whatever. And so with that comes along, I would find that when I would talk to different men, that because that was something that really attracted them to me, in instances when I did have weak moments, or I was feeling depressed, or I was going through whatever in my life, it's kind of like I was made to feel bad about it, as you're saying, because it's like, you're this boss woman, and I'm sure a lot of, high powered women or whatever go through that. Like, you're this boss woman, and, if your man doesn't find attractive you in your high moments as well as in your low moments, it could be like an off like balance of them not knowing how to handle it. So it's extremely tough when you can't just, show your weak moments because you already have like this idea that I don't want him to see me this way. I don't want him to see me shameful, embarrassed, depressed, or whatever. And I feel like your partner should create a space where you do feel comfortable to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it can be difficult. Do you have any suggestions in things that might be able to help, maybe questions or just ways, I guess, that men would be able to do that better for the women in their lives?
I mean, I think honestly, it just comes from healthy dialogue. I mean, I think that if a man is dealing with a woman that kind of has like a tough exterior and she's not really kind of open to talking about deep dark things off the gate, I think that it's important for him to lead in that. I think that if he is able to show a little bit of his vulnerability and say, hey, these are the things that are bothering me, these are the things that triggered me, I think that it'll then show an example of, okay, he understands, he gets it, he sees that I'm not judging him, so I expect that in return. So I think that it just kind of is like a give and take of just saying, I mean, I guess a woman can ask if it's the beginning of the relationship, what are some things that bother you, or what are some things that you've gone through that have brought you to today or whatever, and just kind of create that sort of foundation to have like honest communications. I mean, honestly, for me, it was a mixture of that. And then also just being in the moment and having a situation where we need to talk and we just kind of had to figure it out together of like, okay, I need this type of support from you. And I think that part is really important too. Like being self-aware enough to know what type of support that you need, because
Mhm.
sometimes you just need someone to just like listen to you vent. Sometimes you need someone to provide a solution to you. So I think that part is really like important as well.
I really liked what you said about basically a strategy being for men to kind of lead in expressing vulnerability as well, or showcasing vulnerability. I know
Yeah.
that a lot of men are under the impression that vulnerability is unattractive to women.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I have said that okay, so first of all, I think in general, a woman that likes you wants you to confide in her. She wants you to be vulnerable. Now, that is not to say upon first meeting a woman, you're on a first date across from her and crying and carrying on. Like that's not necessarily attractive, but I think vulnerability has levels to it. So like seeing a man cry is like
Mhm.
high level vulnerability because a lot of women are just not used to it. Like the first time that, like even recently, I was having a conversation with my parents and my sister, and my dad started to get emotional. And my sister was like, Kiana, why did you ask him that? Now dad is like, his eyes are watering. Like she was upset with me about like making him, and it was like a positive conversation, but he was expressing himself. And I was like, Kiara, no, like it's healthy for you to see a man get emotional because we have this expectation of men to not be emotional, to like we talked about for women, like to have it all together. And I think that Black people are the only people that we place that expectation on for men and for women.
Mhm.
um like it's not as uh not, I don't want to say disturbing, but it doesn't bother you as much when you see a white man cry, or like if
Mhm.
you see like a Hispanic man cry. But like when you
Mhm.
see a Black man cry, it's like, oh, something really happened here. Like he's really upset. So I think that, so like what are your thoughts? Like do you think that that's a turnoff for women, for men to express vulnerability?
I don't think that, I'll say this, I don't think that it should be a turnoff. I mean, I think like you said, we should be able to create space for our partners to be able to be vulnerable. I think that it really just It just depends on, I guess, like the level in which they express their emotions. So, you know, like you said, if you're on their first date and they're crying about something, again, it will just depend, just like with context, like what it is. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if that would necessarily be like a bad thing or a turn off to me, but I think what it is I think that as women we want to see that. I don't know if it's best to say that like men have like control over their emotions, or um because there will be times when they kind of just like they explode. I mean, we all do. But basically that they're not like in an unstable mental headspace. So if it comes across like I just met you and you seem a bit like unstable, then I would suggest like maybe you should maybe not even be engaging in dating right now and maybe like focus on yourself. But in any other way, I don't see it as like a turnoff. I actually find it comforting that you trust me enough to show that side of yourself. But I know not every woman may feel that way, but me personally, like I don't look at it negatively.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I do think there's context necessary, and I do think that there is, because in the video that I did about red flags for men or red flags in men, one
Mhm.
of them was that like he's impulsive.
Mhm.
Um, I think that okay, I'm gonna read Alan's comment here. The vast majority of people in general and women in particular are not remotely prepared for male emotional expression. I don't think that they're prepared for it, but I think it's because they haven't necessarily seen it. I think that most men, even if you ask them, like, have you ever seen your dad cry? Or have you ever been in the presence of another man while he was crying? And then like, what was that like? I think most people have never really been in the presence of a man crying or being very expressive with their emotions. So I think for both parties, men and women, I think it's a foreign thing that we're just not really used to. But I think if you come across a woman that is very self aware and in tune with her emotions in a healthy way, because there's a
Yeah.
difference between a woman that experiences emotion and acts on emotion and one that experiences emotion, processes emotion, and then acts in a way that's logical. If you come across a woman that is self aware and acts with a logical, like, I don't know, a logical way, then I think she's going to be more accepting to hold space for that because she has an understanding of her emotions. So she understands that they are a normal part of life.
Mhm.
Um, but versus like the opposite. What do you think, Malia?
I mean, I think a lot of relationships, there are situations where both people are not able to are not self-aware, are not able to manage their emotions. So when you're in a situation where, you know, y'all are both going through things, it's kind of like a blockage because you don't know how to handle each other's situation. So at that point, I would say, okay, you probably need to both talk to someone as individuals and together. Um, I personally think that, I mean, similar to what you said, like a lot of people, they like what does that look like as far as male emotional expression? I mean, a lot of times we see it um shown as like anger or just like an explosive sort of thing, because I think that it's suppressed so much. When we finally see it, it's like bah,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people are in fear of that. But I think that, again, like, to not continue the cycle of men feeling suppressed and not being able to express their emotions in relationships, and women as well, is just something that we just need to just put on the table, me personally.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. We have another comment from Mr. D. Hey, Mr. D. Love this guy. He said there's a difference between men versus boys. Men know what they want and they will provide. Men are secure within themselves. You can trust in his decisions. Boys, on the other hand, dot dot dot. Um, and then he said that there's a reason. I'm thinking you're saying there was a reason why we don't see men expressing emotions. And then he says, in a man's world, we can't risk being vulnerable. I think that that's true, but I think that in terms of when y'all say that you want a woman that is peaceful or provides peace, in my head, the assumption is this is a safe space for me to not have to have that wall up that I'm required to have when I'm out in the world. And so if that's the case, then she needs to be equipped to handle your emotions. And I would think that a woman that is in tune and in control of her emotions would be best fit for that. What are you thinking, Malia?
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. And this comment, like men can't risk being vulnerable. I hate that.
I
I
know.
hate that. And sometimes, and oftentimes, I mean, I wonder, like, how do we break the cycle? I mean, if we continue to believe that we can't be vulnerable, then how do we break through that? I mean, I think at a certain point, we just have we just have to be,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't feel like it is healthy to continue to suppress the things that we're going through. I mean, like, again, when we're going back to, like, having a feminine partner, feminine woman, um, I think that that's a part of, like, the nurturing aspect of it, and being able to be your peace when you come home, being able to feel comfortable to, just shed all of your layers without feeling like so exposed where you feel like it's dangerous for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think there has to be, like, a willingness of the man in this instance to want to do that.
Yeah, and the unfortunate part about vulnerability is that it leaves you open for disappointment and to be hurt. Like that's the sort of like intertwined with what that means is like unfortunately, you won't know if she's equipped to handle it until you try it. And every woman is different. But like the payoff to finding one that is equipped for that is like, it'll change your whole life, frankly, to be able to come home and not have to be on guard or not have to have it all together or whatever. Alan said, which is partly why most men decide against it. In most men's experience, our women's reflex is to make it about themselves. Now we're forced to deal with their issues with our
Mm.
issues. LOL. Yeah, I think that that's true. I'm assuming, Alan, I don't know if this is what you're saying, but like, are you saying that like if you bring up an issue or you're vulnerable about an issue with her and then now she's making an issue about your issue that you're bringing up to her because she's offended by what you said? Or is that how are you interpreting that, Malia?
Or I just interpret it as if he feels comfortable enough to bring something up about that he's going through, then the woman would then make it about her, not necessarily about, like, his particular thing, but like something that she's going through as well. Is kind of
Oh,
what I'm
like,
thinking.
and I think if that's what he's meaning, I think that I can't remember what, I think it was in some psychology class somewhere in Chapel Hill. Um, and it was saying that basically women in conversation, particularly, but just in general, women have a need to connect or feel connection. So a lot of times when men or anybody brings up something, we're like, oh my God, that happened to me too. And then you start like going
Mhm.
into like when that happened to you, but it's like the desire to create connection or to like
Mhm.
make you feel like you're understood by them
Mhm.
versus sometimes men I think want you to just literally kind of like how you said earlier, like just listen. One of the things that I heard most recently that I think is helpful when going into conversation, and I think men can be proactive about setting the intentions into the conversation, which is a thing that I advocate for. Like in any crucial conversation or important or whatever conversation, set intentions going into it. And I think what that could look like in this instance is, okay, baby, I need comfort in this conversation. I don't need solutions. I just need you to listen. Or like, I need solutions. I'm struggling with this and I don't know how to get out of it. And I think
Mhm.
I think men can lead with that. I think women can also, if a man comes to them, start to say, like, okay, baby, do you need comfort or do you need solutions? Like, what
Mhm.
is my role in this conversation so that I know how I can best show up for you? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. And I think also to the point of what Alan was just saying, like I think sometimes I think that we should note that in relationships, each person goes through phases. So, it could be a situation where, one partner is going through a really depressed time and the other one is doing okay, and then it switches or vice versa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that both partners just have to be mindful that, like, hypothetically, even though I'm going through something, that doesn't mean that the other partner can't then express if they're going through something too. Because I think sometimes one partner may not feel like, okay, like if my girl is, depressed right now because she lost her job or whatever, I'm struggling with this, but I don't want to make her situation worse. So I'm just not going to talk about it. Like, I think that there needs to be some sort of communication where it's like, yeah, like I'm feeling down right now, but I can still hear you. I still want to help you too. That doesn't mean that I'm so solely into myself that I can't lift you up as well. And that goes back again to bringing two people together that are self-aware. And being self-aware doesn't mean that you don't go through things. It
Mm-hmm.
just means that you know how to recover when those experiences do happen.
Yeah, I think that's where communication is very important because honestly, me and you have had conversations like that before. And I'm like, well, girl, what's going on with you? Like, you haven't really said what's going on with you. You're like, well, I know that you're going through it. So I didn't want to, like, basically, the term I use is like hijack the conversation. Like, I didn't want to hijack the
Mhm.
conversation knowing that you're struggling with this. And so, but it sounds like from what Alan is saying that women sometimes are not able to, first of all, women in general, I've found are really terrible communicators. So we need to put that out there first. So whereas like I can be like, oh, like I have posts on Instagram was like the 5 things to say after an argument. Like I talk about communication, and I think my ability to communicate is better or higher at a higher level than most people, especially women. I think we have to acknowledge that women are very bad at communicating. And I think that women can't, I think men can too, but I think that women tend to get very defensive, which I see Alan kind of expounded on what he was saying. So, like, this is an example. He's like, okay, he says, I'm feeling really blah right now. I feel unfulfilled. And then her response is, I'm not a good enough partner to you. You don't love me anymore, because she's taken him feeling unfulfilled personally. And rather than maybe ask the question, so in my head, if my man comes to me and says, again, I'm feeling really blah right now, I feel unfulfilled, my next question is, before I jump to, oh, he's talking about me, is, what do you mean? Like, can you expound on that? Like, what is unfulfilling? What is feeling unfulfilled? Or is it like professionally? Is it like, what is it? And I think a lot of women jump from, okay, you made this statement, and the assumption is it's about me, which we could dive deeper into why she jumped into that in the first place. But for purposes of the conversation, I think that what are your thoughts, Malia?
I think I would take the approach similar to what you said, as far as like, can you expound on that more instead of just like jumping down his throat about like it's about me. And I think also another healthy technique, and I know it may feel unnecessary, but maybe before you bring a conversation to the table, you can say, baby, this is not about our personal situation, but I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. So already out the gate, you already know, okay, this is not about me. If there is some sort of insecurity there, or there's some sort of issue there, and then you can just assess whatever it is that he's going through. I find that to be helpful. But that does happen. I've been this person before.
Yeah, I
So
think
yeah.
that, kind of like what you're saying, I think that you have two options in this situation. Either you find somebody that doesn't take everything so personally. That's the first
Mhm.
option. That's always your option, is to back out and find somebody else. I think the other option is what you're advocating for, which is to, as my mom says, deal with people according to what you know about them. So if I know that when I, like, before you said that statement, if you really know your girl, then you knew she might take it like that. So similarly, there are some things, like if I text my man and I'm like, we need to have a talk, he automatically is thinking that it's negative. So I can say, okay, we need to have a conversation. I've just been thinking about some stuff. It's not bad. That
Yeah.
automatically puts him at ease. And he's like, oh, okay, when do you want to talk? Versus me just like leaving it ominous and like a little scary. So I think that's a second option that men have, is if you want to bring up something to your girl and you're like, I already know that in the past it's been taken out of context, or you just like, I want to put her mind at ease up front, then you have the option of kind of prefacing it, like you said, with, it's not about us, it's about, some things professionally. Like you could say, oh God, you can say more than just, I'm feeling blah, I'm feeling unfulfilled. Like you can say more than that. Like you don't have to just leave it there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I want to go back to something that you said.
What I say?
So, so I'm just curious, why do you feel like women are terrible communicators?
You said why do I feel like they are, or as in like what makes them terrible communicators, or what makes me think that they're terrible communicators?
I guess either or. I guess what
Well,
makes you think that they are, yeah.
what makes me think they are? So I didn't necessarily feel like that until I started, because I don't think they believe in me. You know how much I actually did watch Kevin Samuels while he was alive. And when I actually watched those conversations, I was like, dang, they having a hard time. They are having a hard time out here getting their point across. And even sometimes you can kind of understand what they're trying to say, but it's just not coming out in a way that anybody but them can understand. So that was my first kind of look at that, because our experience is a little different, like when I think about the schools that I went to, when I think about college, the women that we were around, they knew how to communicate with other people. Like we saw that. We were around a lot of very intelligent women, but I understand that we're potentially the minority, what I saw. So now in looking at, especially seeing online, like even with Kendra G's show, with Kevin Samuels' show, there were a lot of women calling in. I think they were probably more representative of the average woman than what I thought. Now, I think, why are they terrible communicators? I think a lot of women speak before they think. And I don't think a lot of women spend a lot of time really diving into what they think and why they think what they think. And so it's really easy to trip up a lot of women, because once you ask her to expound on something, it falls apart, because there was not a lot of thought that went into the formulation of her opinions. One thing that I do want to point out, because I hear this a lot, and Alan, people say this all the time. Men get very upset when women start statements with I feel like this. If you say like, what do you think about blah, blah, they say, I feel like, and men find issue with that. And the assumption is whenever women start sentences with I feel like, it's going to go downhill typically when that happens. But for anybody that's really gone to therapy, and a lot of the Black community has not, therapists teach you to speak in I feel statements, because typically when you start a sentence like that, the other person lowers their defense, because you're talking about your feelings and your emotions. So the other person typically doesn't take that feedback as harshly as they do if you just start saying like, you're doing this and you're doing that and you're the problem and men are doing this, this, and this. If you say I feel like, it puts it on you versus projecting it onto the other person. But men don't like hearing it. But I'm telling y'all, if y'all go to therapy, that's how they're going to tell you to talk to each other. Mr. D said, first, he said, when a woman cooperates with her man, that means she understands him.
But
Yeah,
cooperates. What is the?
you know what? I know you probably don't like that word, but I actually like what he's saying there. I like what he's saying.
Expound on that, Mr. D. When you say cooperate,
I'm not mad at what Mr. D is saying, because collaboration. You know what? I'm saying cooperation is synonymous with collaboration. Cooperation and
okay.
collaboration is similar. So I do think you're more willing, and because men can say what they want, and I've been telling y'all it's not true. Men like to say, like, women basically want to push their own agenda and they want to do what they want to do, and whatever else. And I keep telling them, if a woman really likes you, she will get on your program. She will. Your program don't even have to be fully laid out, and she will hop on that program. Like, she will say, give me a part in that play. And the program is not even all the way spelled out. Like, half of it is not even finished yet. And she'll be like, sign me up, friend. If she really likes you, she will.
I guess for some. Because for me, it would need to make sense.
For most.
I don't care. I don't care how much I like you, how much I find you attractive. If what you're saying is not adding up, then I'm not following the plan.
Yeah, but typically women, I do think, have more grace for, I think that's in general. I think women and men, I think the more you understand someone, the more grace you have for them, the more likely you are to cooperate or collaborate with whatever, the deal is, the program.
Sure. So let me ask you this. So do you believe that there needs to be like roles within a relationship?
I do. But I'm on the gender roles. I'm on the gender roles team, but I'm more, And so, guys, when I started the conversation, I said me and Malia are very much alike, but like we're very different. I am more on the traditional side of life and relationships than what Malia is. I think that there are roles, because I think inherently men and women are different and we have different strengths and weaknesses. I think that gender roles are helpful in creating a balanced relationship. What was the purpose of that question, Malia?
Well, I'm looking at the question that Mr. D, the statement that Mr. D posed, and this is just my personal opinion. I feel like having specified roles, it's very rooted in the ego. And I feel like there's going to be strengths and weaknesses that I have, and the same with like my partner. So I can't come into a relationship just saying that I'm going to be totally submissive in all aspects, or I'm going to be totally living the soft life, or totally tapping into my femininity 100% of the time, because I feel like there's going to be different phases in our lives that require different things. There may be a situation where my man loses his job, or he gets sick, or whatever, and I would not the relationship would not be productive to me to stay in a role that's not conducive to where we're at in the relationship. Not saying, I mean, for some people that may work, but I just feel like it's really we just really identify with like these roles, and it's just fueled by like our egos. And I don't know if in all cases if it's beneficial, in my opinion. I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it's a little, at least in my perspective, it's a little bit more like fluid. There's some instances where he leads, and I respect that and I follow him, and there's instances when I do, but I'm not like, we're not fighting each other for the leadership in the relationship.
Yeah, I think, well, okay, I do agree that in relationships, I think that different seasons require different things. And I think that that's important. I think for me, when I'm thinking about, or how I interpreted your question, there are certain roles that I like, I am attracted to in a man. So, for instance, I find it attractive when a man desires to be the provider. Now, can he 100% provide like throughout all of our days? Maybe not. Like you said, maybe there is a situation where he loses his job and then I need to like step up and compensate for that. Or maybe he's burnt out and he can't, like there's just different things that happens. He gets sick, whatever happens, like things happen. But the willingness and the desire to provide is attractive to me. Like a man wanting to take care of his family is attractive to me. Like, so I think that, yeah, in different seasons, that might not always, you may not be able to always fulfill the requirements of the role that you desire, but the willingness and the desire, I think it should be sort of consistent. So like, for instance, if I have just had a baby, then I'm not going to be up cooking and cleaning probably. Like I'm up nursing the baby every 2 hours or whatever else. And if we have other kids, like that's my priority. So I might not be able to make, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for you. I might not be able to do all the things that I used to do. And so my hope would be that my partner then has grace for me in that season, because my desire for my role as the mother or the wife has not changed, but the circumstances have changed my ability to fulfill that role temporarily. That's my thought, at least. Who is this? I don't know who you are, but hey, friend. He said a lot of the damage is already done, because for most men it only takes one woman weaponizing their vulnerability for them to never do it again. We're so behind on these comments.
Oh shucks.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that I think that's a problem. We shouldn't weaponize people's vulnerability. That's an immature mindset, I think, when and that's why one of the characteristics of a feminine woman is that she is kind. I don't think that's kind behavior to weaponize someone's vulnerabilities or their areas of insecurity or weaknesses or anything of that nature. That's not a feminine woman.
Well, in my opinion to this comment here, I would say, yes, that is extremely unfortunate if a woman has weaponized your vulnerability. But I also think, like, after a certain point, it only becomes a disservice to yourself, because I'm sure moving forward, you do want to experience a partner that does nurture you, that does look out for you, that does create a safe space for you to be vulnerable. So if you move forward in life and you just completely shut down and you're not open to receiving the right person to take care of you, I just think it's just a disservice. Like, I think that things happen to teach us a lesson, and no matter how unfortunate that it is, and I think that we then move forward and try to shape the narrative for something better. I wouldn't just completely just shut down and just be damaged, quote unquote, just because this one person did something to me, because they get to go on and live their life, but that shouldn't stop me from living mine.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point. I think that everybody deserves to have a space where they can be vulnerable. And so I do think that you do yourself a disservice if you say like, okay, well, she did that. It was 10 years ago, but she did that. I can't risk that again. I think that you have to heal from that, because if that indicates that there's some healing that needs to take place where you haven't fully either forgiven her or forgiving yourself for trusting her. And maybe you're looking at it like, oh, I shouldn't have trusted her. This is what happened. So now that was like confirmation that women shouldn't be trusted with your emotions. But if you heal from that experience, then you say, okay, she wasn't ready for my emotions, but I still hold out hope because I know that I deserve a space where I can be vulnerable, that there is maybe someone else that is equipped to handle me properly and handle my emotions properly. Alan says, one of our frustrations is that women are the primary party to take issue with certain interactions, however, are unwilling to own any part of the solution without it being initiated by the man. Alan, I wish that you could expound on that, because this seems like a very meaty comment here. And I'm gonna in a little bit, I'm gonna drop the link if you guys want to hop Alan with us. And I'm not 100% sure where you were going with that, Alan. I wish I could actually hear you say it. I feel like if I heard you, I would understand what you were saying. Do you understand what he's saying, or do you have thoughts about what he said?
I was looking at the comments.
Oh. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna move on from that one.
Okay, let's get back to it if he wants to explain.
We'll come back to that. So this is this is why men and women communicate differently. Women communicate through feelings, men communicate through logic. But you know what? I don't accept that. I think that
not every woman.
yeah, I think that's typically true, but that shouldn't be the case. Like, I think that we tend to give a pass to women to be emotional in a way that's uncontrollable and illogical. And I just think that women are capable of doing better than that. So I think that we do need to hold women accountable to do better with that, because I think that I don't like when people say that, like, that women communicate through like, we shouldn't be doing that. I don't think that because I expect more. I'm expecting more from our women. I think that we need to take the time before we just fly off the handle and jump to conclusions and act irrationally, yelling, cursing, doing all kinds of other foolishness, not fully thinking out our thoughts before communicating. I think we need to stop doing that. So I'm thinking all people are capable of communicating through logic. There's nothing in a woman's brain stopping her from doing that. Yes, she is more emotionally aware potentially than men, but she can still communicate logically as well. We're not gonna give her that pass. What do you think, Malia?
No, I agree with what you said. I mean, I just think in general we should all just really practice our communication skills and just think through before we talk.
Mm-hmm. Right. Quentin Wilson, hello, friend. I'm also not familiar with you. The culture also has women in selfish mindsets, so they don't care about good communication. My way or the highway, no self-reflection, to summarize. That's kind of what I was saying. Like, I think that we got to stop with that. And men, I know y'all not going to like this, but stop dealing with women that are like that. Like, I think that's the only way they would care enough to change, is like, if you stop dealing with them and they're seeing like good communication is a requirement now. Like, the moment that you start acting out like you're getting cut off, do that. Cut them off. If they can't talk to you with respect and dignity, then cut them off.
Yeah. I mean, I think just in the same vein as you're saying, women say my way or the highway, I think men, you have the right to demand what you want in a relationship too, just as much as women do. So if communication is at a top priority for you and you feel like you're not getting that, then you don't have to accept that. I mean, there's going to be people who are going to, be able to communicate with you in the way that you need and the way that you like. And I just wouldn't waste time on anybody that makes you feel like you have to suppress your emotions, period.
Yeah, period. Yes, period. Okay, so Malia, some people want you to expound on this. Where'd it go?
Which one?
Okay, so like he didn't say it in a complete sentence, so I'm gonna have to summarize. I know what he's talking about though. So Stuart, hey Stuart. So he said, so he's referring to earlier when you said, oh, when I was like, women will get on your program if they like you. You don't even have to have the whole program like laid out and finished. And you were like, well, I needed to make sense. And so he's like, well, if you need it to make sense, basically, then cooperation is lost. He was like, because he may see a way to the goal that you don't. So I've heard that a function of leadership as it pertains to men and that role, as we were talking about roles earlier, is that he needs to, so when I talked about the red flags in that video that I did, I think the first red flag was that he has no direction, or he lacks direction for this purpose, because the expectation of a man that I would choose and a man
Mhm.
that I would tell women to choose is that he is able to lead.
Mhm.
So the expectation is he has a clear direction, he understands where he's going. And so you don't necessarily have to understand the goal. He needs to understand the goal.
Mhm.
And even if you can't, you still need to trust him to lead. What are your thoughts? Do you want to clarify or expound on that?
So no, sure, I'll clarify. So I guess if I misinterpreted what you were saying, but so I thought you were saying if a woman really likes a man, and even if his plan is not all together or doesn't make sense or whatever, it because she really likes him that she'll still follow. And so my response to that is for me to really like him, if he wants me to follow, I don't have a problem with being led by my partner. Let's just say that first. I don't have a problem with that. But it has to like make sense. So to me, how I interpret the word cooperation, that means that you are communicating the plan with me. Now, if this is something that you are spearheading yourself and my role is to just follow you with it, then there needs to be communication along with it if there's not any particular action that I need to take per se to make it happen. That was my interpretation of it. So my thing is like how you just explained, a red flag, if a man has no direction, I don't care how much I like you. If you have no direction, then I'm not following you, period.
Gotcha.
So that was more of my thing. But I don't have an issue with like being led in my relationship.
So basically what you're saying is that as long as he seems to understand where he's going, then
Mhm.
as long as obviously if you like him, then you're open to following him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there needs to be at least the perception of some type of clarity in his mind about where he's going.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, hopefully that cleared some things up, friends. Um, let's see. Alan says, and again, we're so behind. We're like
And
12
I see
minutes.
that he says submission is not bad either. I don't think that submission is bad.
I think he's saying the word submission because you
Oh
didn't like cooperation. And yeah,
yeah.
yeah, women don't tend to like the word submission,
Again,
but
it's all like with context. But again, it's really just a word. So I don't want to get too hung up over that. But yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and it has negative connotations a lot of the time, but it in its essence is not negative, especially for a relationship. I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
Okay. Alan says, there's going to be times when I can't tap into my masculinity 100% of the time. Most women wouldn't accept this statement from a man.
Mm. Then that's unfortunate.
That
I
is
don't
unfortunate.
believe. Well, yeah. I mean, maybe I'm sure there are women that are like that, but then again, these conversations that we have in the beginning stages, I think would be able to determine that. Again, I think just as much as like at least I believe that men want us to be decisive in what we want, I think that men need to also be decisive too. When I was like in the dating pool, I don't think that I've ever really heard a man say that like communication was like his top like
Mhm.
priority or
Yeah.
vulnerability or being able to feel like they have a safe space within me. Like that's something that I naturally do, but that wasn't like a requirement of any of the men that I was dating in the past. So I think that if that, which it seems like it is important, then that should be said initially.
I agree. I think in general, what I've been saying a lot is I don't think in the first instances, the types of conversations that should be happening are happening. And
Mhm.
so a lot of the conversation initially is very superficial. It's like, what do you like to do? What do you like to do? Like, and that's stupid. Like, what do you like to eat? What do you like? It's just very superficial and it doesn't teach you anything about what would sustain a relationship. And so I think both parties, men and women, we have to do a better job up front vetting people that we're spending our time with, let alone money and effort and energy and emotions and all these other things. And so I think we need to, both parties, get very clear on what we actually want outside of these blanket terms like, oh, I want a feminine woman, I want her to be fit. Okay, she's fit, and what? Like, what else? Do you only want a woman that you look at and that is visually appealing, or are there other things that are equally or slightly below or slightly above that are, of a similar importance? Because those are what you need to be focused on, not just how does she look in the dress when y'all go on your first date to go get drinks, which I'm gonna talk about that soon too, because that's a terrible first date, getting drinks. That at another time. But I think that you're 100% true. I mean, 100% correct, Leah. I agree with you. And then Mr. D was asking if you have a problem with the man leading a marriage, but you already kind of talked about that.
I don't.
Most women. Okay, let's keep on going. I wonder what you were talking about here, Stuart, when you said most of the cats in the manosphere have issues with that. I would love to hear what you were saying about that.
You said we need to talk. Please join the panel and speak for us, men.
I don't even know if Alan is still up here. Alan, you still up here? And then Mr. D, I think this is a good point here. Don't date men you don't trust. I think that is 100% true. I think that I particularly have issues when women say, like, some men, when you talk about submission, they say, like, you can't submit to all men. But you really shouldn't be with a man that you can't be submissive to, or that you don't trust to be submissive with or for, or whatever. I do think that that's a big thing too. It's like, that really shouldn't ever come up, because that's true. Yeah, there are some men that don't deserve that. But then why are you with them? Like, then we don't need to have that conversation if the man that you're with is not him. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and I mean, I know trust is something that takes a little while to build, but I think that you can kind of tell from like early signs just how a man carries himself. Is he someone that you feel you could be supported by? And then I think as you experience different things, you can kind of just begin to, trust this person more and more. But I think you can tell a snake from the beginning, at least if you're again self-aware and trust your intuition.
Yeah, those red flags. I'm telling y'all, I don't feel like my video about questions to ask on a first date has gotten the attention that it deserves. But let me tell y'all, when you start employing some of these questions and you start asking these things up front, people have a hard time. One thing that my mom always says is, you can only play your part for so long. So before you start forgetting the lines. So like, if you are just going along with like the regular flow and y'all are just like casually dating, seeing each other, talking on the phone, texting about stupid stuff, that woman or that man is going to be able to play the part, whatever part they want to play, to a T. When you start throwing curveballs and start really asking intentional questions and start really taking a vested interest in making sure that this person is fit for what you want, those lines start flying out the window. Because most people, men or women, Alan says this all the time, men and women, they're not used to getting good questions. So them just kind of being cute, them just kind of like being nice and whatever, that's enough, because most people don't dive any further than that to really get to the bottom of who this person is. But if you start being intentional about it, you will throw them for a loop, my friends.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people are afraid to be intentional in the early portion of the dating stages, because I think people believe that there's then some sort of obligation to make this work. So it's like, if you're on your first date and, you're asking like tough questions, I've heard that people feel like, okay, does this mean that she wants to have a relationship with me? And that may not even be the case. Like, I think like that sort of narrative should be stripped. Like, we should just be able to ask tough questions as we're both vetting each other, where it doesn't feel like there's this obligation that like, okay, because I'm asking you this means that we have to be in a relationship. Like, we're just we're just getting to the meat so that we're not wasting each other's time and we can see if we're a good match for each other.
Yeah, we gotta normalize getting to it like quick, like get to the point. Like it shouldn't take multiple dates and months and years for you to figure out if this person is willing to get on your program, if they align with what your program is. Because a lot of times we spend a lot of time, men and women, trying to, because by the time we start asking the questions, we already like them. And so by the time we like them, now we're trying to fit them into our puzzle versus coming in the beginning saying, okay, does this person are they already a good fit for the piece that I'm trying to put them in within my puzzle? Versus, okay, I like you now and I'm invested in you. So now I want you to fit. So let me do what I can, see if I can, make you more cooperative, change you in this way and that way so that you can become a good fit. And then you spend all this time realizing like, it's just going to take too much work to get this square piece into this circle spot.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't. I'm going to have to skip ahead because I don't even know what's going on. I'm so behind. That shouldn't even be an option because why would you even be in romantic fellowship with a man you don't revere? Unfortunately, the top guys wouldn't accept constant questioning of his leadership. Well, yeah, we kind of talked about that. Like, you don't need to be with nobody that you can't trust and you feel like he makes bad decisions. And one of the things that I talked about in terms of, this was on a stream like a few weeks ago, was on desirable traits in men, the traits that women find desirable in men. And one of them is consideration. So I would also say that for women, don't be with somebody that you believe doesn't consider you. So in that live, I talked about a lot of times men have this impression that women need to have control of all these things. And we don't want you to make any decisions without us. And we want to be in charge of everything. And we're fighting for dominance and stuff. Women that don't trust you and respect you, 100% they feel that way about you. But a woman that trusts and respects you, what her expectation is that even if she's not at the table, if she's not in the room, that you're still able to consider her in your decision-making process. So we don't have to be at the table. The same way I'm not at the table when the governor or the sheriff or whoever makes decisions, I elected that person. I said, go ahead, make decisions on my behalf. We elect you to make decisions on our behalf and on the family's behalf. We don't have to be there all the time. But the minute we feel like you're not representing our interests in the decision-making process, that's when trust is broken.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts, Malia?
No, I agree. I agree totally with what you said.
I agree. Jolson, is that your name? I'm not sure. Nice to meet you, friend. Women develop good communication skills with men from their fathers. With the father's influence, thick skin is formed that allows for logic and emotion, along with being able to digest hard truths. And I can see some logic in what you're saying, and not necessarily just fathers, but father figures as well. Yeah, because, and Malia knows this, me and my family, we have the weirdest, like, very open, like, communication relationship with each other. So like I can literally ask my dad anything and it's not like weird or uncomfortable. Like I can ask him about sex, I can ask him about dating, I can ask him about money, I can ask him about so many different things, but we have that. And Malia's the same way because I've been around her and her dad and it's the same pretty much. Her relationship with her dad.
Two dads, stepdad and a dad. So I've got
yeah. And they're very open. So like, what are your thoughts about this comment?
I think it's absolutely true. I mean, I think that, as a woman, our father's presence is so important for a multitude of reasons, and especially for our perspective on dating and engaging with men, if that's what we choose to do. And I mean, they just give you the game. I mean, if we want to call it that, as it pertains to this. So yeah, I agree.
Okay. I need to read the comment before that one. So Stuart, this sounds like a sports reference. I'm probably gonna miss this. It says a man should carry the flags, but not the penalties forward. Okay, hold on. Okay, so then you said most of the cats in the manosphere have issues with that. Okay. So I think this is in reference to not like I think this is a reference to when I was talking about men, or in that particular case, that man needing to heal from what happened in that last situation and not kind of souring his perception of women moving forward by what happened. And I think that's what you're saying. So you're saying a man should carry the flags, but not the penalties forward. So like, see what happened in that situation, like forgive, but don't forget. And then, but
Hold that
don't
against somebody else.
exactly. Yeah. I think that's where he was going. I like that. I think that that's 100% true. Am I right? Yes. Stuart said exactly. Yes, Stuart. I'm with you. Okay, we have another question. Where do women learn how to evaluate male pedigree? It used to be taught by elders with real life experience, not social media. I do think social media has taken a bit of a helping hand in this, where you have a lot of influencers like Ace Metaphor, Stefan Speaks. I know y'all don't like him, Derek Jackson, Steve Harvey. Like there's been a lot of people that have kind of stepped up and are actively giving like things to consider and stuff like that. I do think that men have to kind of help with that too. What I'm seeing in the manosphere, which I'm not a part of the manosphere, but you see things on YouTube. But a lot of people, a lot of men are sort of vocal about the things that they don't like in women, and are vocal about women choosing the wrong men and then punishing the good men for the decisions of the bad men. But I don't unfortunately hear a lot of conversations where men are stepping forward in these same spaces and telling women this is what you need to look out for, so that the good men in the future are not negatively impacted by what these Pookies and Ray Rays are doing to y'all. Like, so this will help y'all choose better. I'm not hearing a lot of that conversation. So unfortunately, I feel like for most people, social media is playing that role. But like for me and Malia, obviously we have father figures. Malia has multiple father figures in her life. So what do you think?
Yeah, I would say for me, I learned from my both my dad and my stepdad as far as male pedigree. And I think for the women who may not have that sort of guidance in their life, I think that a lot of times it's influenced by like what's popular. So, for the women that want to be wine, dine, and taken care of, then they look at, a lot of these big time flashy men as like their sort of standard of what they want, and that's just showing them just like an example, yeah, of like what they want. So I think social media definitely influences that.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay, Juby. Hi, Juby. I'm not sure if that's your name. Welcome, Juby. He said, I find women aren't good communicators outside of their professions. I always find that women, when they don't have a formula for how to communicate with someone, they run interactions through feelings. I agree with that. I think, unfortunately, like a lot of, I'm gonna say men and women, but women for sure too. If you ask them who are they, 99% of people that I've ever asked that question, they lead with their profession. If I say like, Malia, who are you? You say, well, I'm a content creator. I'm whatever else you say. Like you lead with that first. A lot of us don't even know how to answer that question in ways that don't include other people. So like, I'm a father, I'm a mother, I'm a whatever, a sister, whatever. And they don't know how to answer it without including their profession in it. A lot of us don't know who we are outside of our relationship to other people and to our achievements. And I think that that is why when it comes time to communicate about things, we don't really know how to do that effectively, because the majority of our mental bandwidth is spent thinking about work and thinking about caring for other people or providing for other people or protecting other people, versus who we are, what we need, and then how to provide ourselves with what we need. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with what you said. I mean, I think that we make our identities like what we do. I think that's like the easiest thing for us to do. And I think that once you know yourself, it makes it easier to have these conversations. Once you know yourself outside of the person that you're dating or where you work or who you take care of or whatever, then you know like what you'll tolerate and what you won't. And so that's the part of, I really think that people need to know themselves as best as possible before they even involve anybody else into their sphere on a romantic level. Like that work needs to be done. Um, I know loneliness is a hard thing, but it is so much more beneficial when you're intentional about your relationship and you know what you're trying to get out of it and who you are, who you want to be in it.
Yeah, and that's not to say that all men or all women desire marriage. I push for that. I think that marriage is important. However, some people, that's not the end goal. So, regardless of what your end goal is, you need to understand what it is for yourself, because I think, and y'all know I say this, I think that women have ruined dating. We're going to talk about that more in a subsequent conversation as well. But I think that women have ruined dating because they've kind of they've wanted to believe that they want things that they don't actually want, or that things that are important to them aren't as important as they actually are. So they're like kind of going with the flow and like, oh, we'll see. Like when men are like, I just want to see where this is going. Like I don't have expectations. They're like, oh, okay, well, that's not important to me either. And it really is. And then it's like you spend all this time and you're not getting what you want because you weren't even upfront about what you wanted to begin with, and that's her fault if that happens. But yeah, I think we have to know what we want, because you can't require anything from anybody that you haven't identified first for yourself. Nobody's going to just give you things that you want if you haven't told them that that's even what you want. That's unlikely to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. 1D Forever said, look out for mean men, multiple stray children, long criminal records. Seems obvious, but many women are attracted to these things. I do think that, you know, given what we see, the choices of some women, it appears that like that's attractive. Like a long criminal record is attractive to women. I don't necessarily think that's attractive, but if that's what they're ending up with, we can't say that that's not in some way attractive. But I think unfortunately a lot of women are valuing charisma and the ability to make us feel good. We're valuing that over some of these things that are clear red flags. What are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for sure. Julesum, I hope I'm saying your name right. Okay. The male pedigree conversation should be provided from older women with relationship success to younger women, not so-called experts with no proven personal demonstration. Yeah, I think that's true as well. I think that one of the problems is that there aren't a lot of women, there aren't a lot of Black women, based on the statistics, that have proven success with choosing good men. So,
Mm-hmm.
like when we're thinking about success rates, which just because a marriage didn't work out, that doesn't mean that either party was bad, a bad person. Um,
Right.
it just means that they weren't necessarily a good fit for each other. So
Right.
I do think that there is a shortage of those women that can even speak to that. Interestingly, like I said, me and Malia, I think that we're good people to have this particular conversation because our influence is from, like, Malia's mom is married. My mom has been married, my whole life. So we are also getting counsel from those types of women that have had success with choosing good men. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but unfortunately, I don't think that there are a lot of women that can even speak on that because
Haven't seen that. Been
yeah, they
exposed to
haven't
that.
seen it, they haven't done it, they weren't raised by women that did that, so it kind of skews it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Ron, hello, Ron. Ron. So you said the biggest problem with Black women is they have absolutely no respect for Black male image, and most Black women, the man they want say they okay. Hold on, let me read this to myself first, Ron. And they're attracted to. Okay, so for most Black women, the man that they say they want and the man that they're attracted to are two different things, is what you're saying. So there's a disconnect. Um, no respect for the Black male image. What are your thoughts on that, Malia? The first part.
I think sure. I think that there are a lot of Black women that have a hard time seeing Black men as a positive force in their relationships, and I think that that has a lot to do. I mean, we can go. I mean, there's a number of factors that lead to that. Um, but I have more of a question like, how do we go beyond that? I mean, I feel like we have these conversations a lot of times in our community where we're just talking about Black women don't respect Black men and Black men don't respect Black women. But how do we get beyond that? At some point, we have to begin to respect each other. So
Mm-hmm.
sure, that is the narrative that we don't respect each other on both sides. So what is the solution beyond just like saying that? And now again, we're making a blanket statement because obviously not all Black women don't
Right.
revere all Black men.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the pathway through?
Mm-hmm. I feel like, in my opinion, because I'm with you, I think there are a lot of channels and places out here that do a really good job at pointing out the problem and complaining about the state of affairs right now. But I
Mhm,
think that there aren't a lot of places where actual solutions are being talked about, where people can actually implement things that will make a difference. And I think that one of my goals here is that that is what people walk away with at every conversation you hear here, is that, okay, well, this is what we're experiencing, and maybe we can try this and see if this helps with that, or try that and see if that helps with anything,
mhm,
within specific relationships, particularly because that's my focus, is relationships.
mhm,
So when I think about the lack of respect, I think that hmm, I think that when we're talking about respect, obviously part of that is in the people that we're choosing. And that's for men or women, because you have to go places where you are valued, where you are seen as valuable, and where your
mhm,
efforts are appreciated. Oh, Alan is here.
mhm,
Um, but so I think that begins to help solve the issue. I think that the other part is understanding the red flags before you get in too deep with people. I think that men and women at this point, somebody said it earlier, like, we're at a place now where a lot of damage has been done. So
mhm,
on a personal level, we all can take accountability for how we present ourselves. So
mhm,
like making sure that we're coming into things with good faith, and exuding the types of people and situations that we want to be portrayed as. But then the
mhm,
other part is, and I said this, Alan, on your live stream, I feel like we have to, as a community, sort of come together and say, like, we're going to stand behind and push the agendas of particular people that are in alignment with how we want our image to be portrayed. So, like, we all know, like, we have the ability to do a lot of stuff as a community if we come together, but a lot of times we don't do that. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Put me your Alan.
I don't know. Alan, what you doing? Alan. Hey, Alan.
Hey guys.
How
Hi,
you
Alan.
doing?
Well, I'm just chilling. Just
Can you please turn
trying to
your
get
camera
ready
on?
for Monday.
Alan sound like he laying down in the bed. Alan, what you got going on, friend?
I'm laying down on the couch.
Oh, see, I was close.
Put
I
your
knew it.
camera on, Alan. I've been
No,
seeing you for 30,
you
40
won't
years.
look. You won't see anything. It's
Wow.
dark in here. You're just gonna see lights
That's
from the
fine, Alan.
TV.
Put your little logo back up. It's fine. Don't even worry about it.
Wow.
So what are we talking about? What's the question on the
Well,
you know what I'm saying
okay.
on the docket?
So we
Well,
want
yeah, go ahead, Kiana.
So right now, the question at hand is, what are the solutions kind of when we're talking about, like Ron said here, like one of the problems with Black women is that they have no respect for the Black male image, and then that the man that they say they want and the man that they're attracted to is different. But we want solutions because, my thing is all about solutions, not just kind of harping on the problem. So from your perspective, how do you think, because you talk to a lot of women, so what are ways in which we can help bridge that gap so that men can feel more respected, and that women have more respect for the male image?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. One of the things that I kind of talk about is the fact that women tend to not have a good working understanding of men's pathology. And what I mean by that is, the way our society is structured, we are the ones pursuing you. And as the pursuer, we have to have an intimate understanding of the pursued. Now, whether that understanding is great is another conversation, but at least we need to know enough about women to manipulate them, to seduce them, to get into proximity with them. However, because men tend to be simple, because men tend to be led by our sexuality, most women's understanding of men is simply their ability to seduce a man sexually, right? So, I think part of the reason the conversation doesn't really move forward is uh, it doesn't seem like, on one hand, men are articulating our grievances in a way that women understand. And on the other hand, it doesn't seem like women are coming into the conversation in good faith, right? Like the idea, the unspoken idea is that all women are benevolent except for, to the extent that they're allowed to be. So basically, if you were a better man, I would be a better woman. As opposed to, it's my responsibility to be a good woman, irrespective of who you are as a man, just like it's my responsibility to be a good man, irrespective of who you are as a woman. So, men just need some kind of like good faith in this conversation, and I think we can move a little further, a little faster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why a lot of my focus has been on helping men understand, like when you talk about like a feminine woman, like what that is, because that type of woman, because I tend to say this a lot. I think that we tend to be hyper focused on the types of women that men don't actually want, and I think that in saying that men want a feminine woman, that has specific characteristics, which is what initiated or inspired this conversation. Is like, well, if you can actually find a woman that is what you're saying that you want, then you won't have these issues with her. Obviously, in relationships, you're always going to have some issues or things that you have to reconcile because it's two people with different experiences coming together in a union. So that's not to say that everything is always going to be smooth sailing, but like I think that in weeding out and having concrete things that help vet these women so that you're not wasting your time with what is the equivalent of a Pookie and a Ray Ray for a woman, Alan? Anybody ever talk about that? Like, what is a Pookie Ray Ray woman?
I know their terms. I don't like the terms. I think they're dumb. But yeah, no, there are women who are like counterproductive. I will say though, I think I think the issue with, because you said it before, like we tend to talk about women that we don't want. I think the thing we're noticing is that because on one hand, guys tend to be myopic, we tend to be singularly focused.
Mm-hmm.
At its unhealthiest, we're boring and we're one track minded and we're predictable. At its healthiest, we are disciplined and vigilant and, tunnel vision and all that good stuff. The difference between a quote unquote good man
Mm-hmm.
and a shitty man tends to be wider than the difference between a good woman and a shitty woman. And because I've even had, debates with women who say, just because my friend is a hoe don't mean I'm a hoe. Just because just because she does this, and this doesn't mean I do this, and this. Women they'll be in community with women that they actually hate, if they were being completely honest. They'll have a set of friends just to go to the club. They'll
Mm-hmm.
have a set of friends that are actually maybe actual friends, a set of friends that, they gossip with, and the whole nine. Whereas men, on the other hand, tend to be more so, this is my squad, this is my team, this is my, you know what I'm saying? We're the SEAL Team 6 in this motherfucker. So with that being said, the birds of a feather flock together thing tends to apply more so to men than it does to women. So when men are complaining about, oh, women want to be city girls, or women want to be hot girls, or whatever the case may be, it's because we're seeing even lawyers try to be Instagram famous for their body.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing doctors. Like, I have a friend of mine who's in that life, and he'll tell me, yo, whatever wholesome IG model you see, like, I've seen her in the club acting an ass.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So men are seeing that the differences between quote unquote good women and not so good women, it tends to be minimal at best. So we have to address the whole. We have to address the village, because y'all can't simultaneously say you're every woman, it's all in you, and not understand that comes with some bad things too. That
I'm
wasn't supposed to rhyme, by the way.
I'm a, I'm gonna be honest with you though, Alan. I don't know the women that you were talking to. I don't think that they were being honest. I think in general, I don't think it's just men. I think birds of a feather do flock together. So I think that my personal belief is that if she is in connection with them, there's some part of her that relates to that person. Now, it may not necessarily be that she is a hoe, but in some way they have something in them that they relate to her. So like the way that, so like in my book, there's a section on magnetism, and it's like not just it's exploring why we stay connected to the people that we're connected to. And I say that when you are in connection with somebody, either they relate to you in some way, or they relate to someone that you grew up loving in some way. So like either I'm able to relate to you and I stay in connection with you because you remind me of myself, or I'm able to have grace for you because you share a resemblance to someone that I grew up loving, like maybe my mom or my dad, that had those same issues or deficiencies that you're also experiencing. I think that's a cop out when women say like, "Oh no, I just hang out with her, but we're nothing alike." Like,
No, I agree. I agree completely. I guess the main point I'm trying to drive at is that, women are multifaceted. Women are multidimensional. Women are, in a sense, every woman. And like I said, that comes with bad things as well. So whether or not she relates with that girl because she reminds her of some aspect of her own personality or some aspect of her childhood, there is the lines aren't as fixed for
mm-hmm,
women on average as they are with men, right? So, you know, most of the time when men complain about women, they complain that she changed. Most of the time when women complain about men, they complain that he didn't, right?
mm-hmm,
So women changing is kind of part of you guys' whole makeup, pun intended. You know what I'm saying? Therefore, when men are saying, well, the culture of woman is pushing Meg the Stallion, City Girls, we understand that, hey, I saw, you know what I'm saying, a doctor, I saw a PhD in the club twerking. So it's not as easy for us to differentiate a good woman from a bad woman in the way that it might be easier for you guys to, if you guys, kind of looked at some of these objective differences.
But I'll say this. I'm not sure if men are taking accountability for the way in which, I guess, the type of women that are coming out now, right? Like, we hear all the time that, like, there's, 6 women for every 1 man. So if men are liking a certain type of woman that has her body done, that's very, out there, that has this whole city girl look, then you're going to see more women feeling like they're going to have to change to be able to compete in this new space. So I feel like just as much as women are now kind of like being these more aggressive sort of personalities, especially sexually, I think that that's the feedback that we're getting from men. That's what we see, is that that's what y'all like. Like, we don't hear a lot of times men saying that they're liking the real plain or kind of low key or whatever type of woman. We're seeing y'all give attention to the women that are the city girls. So I think that it's both parties that are playing a role in the look of these relationships.
I agree. I agree. And to my point earlier, I think it really speaks to women lacking a complete and nuanced understanding of men, right? Like, older men would tell younger men, yeah, be sweet to a girl, but don't be a pushover. Don't be nice. Don't be in the friend zone. Like, there's certain counterintuitive truths to understand women, right? Like, you can't just go by a hard and fast playbook. And the same applies to men. So even with the BBL example, I continuously hear, okay, men like women with BBLs. The truth is, we do not. Now, what men like is naked women. Women with BBLs tend to be naked. And since men are primarily drawn by our sexuality, we're primarily drawn by our eyes, it seems to be the case that we would want a BBL girl. So the analogy that I've been given is, and I think I told Kiana this as well, do you want to be Jamarcus Russell or do you want to be Tom Brady? Jamarcus Russell was the first overall pick in the draft. Everybody was excited about him. He was a BBL woman. He was also the biggest bust because his play style, his personality was not sustainable for the league. Whereas Tom Brady, he went in round 7, and now he's considered the greatest football player of all time, right? But again, some of this paradoxical truths, it doesn't make sense on the surface until you investigate it, until you have a complete and nuanced understanding of how men operate. And the truth is, yeah, even though we're drawn by certain things visually appealing, the thing that we choose to tether ourselves to, the thing that we choose to invest our life into, because we have to sign up to potentially die in protection or provision of you, it tends to be different. But if we don't have a further understanding of how men's minds work, we just stop at what it looks like.
So I think that the problem that a lot of women are running into is a similar issue to what a lot of men have experienced and say that they experience, where, and I'm going to do a video about this. I don't think y'all going to like this one, but it's about the whole idea that women don't like nice men. And so y'all say, okay, well, we used to be nice and then y'all didn't choose us. And so we became what y'all like. Y'all didn't want us to be, as they say now, like simping and all these things. That was unattractive. So then y'all became what y'all thought women wanted, which was the bad boy and all these other things, which most women don't marry the bad boy or choose him, that he's not boyfriend material. So they don't even really take him seriously. They do whatever with him. I think the same thing is happening in your example, Alan, where we think that that's what y'all like because that's where y'all are giving your attention to. So then you have these women going out and doing these things because all we can judge is your attention. Like, okay, they seem to like this based on what it looks like. So I think that's why I always say, I think that what men and what women are experiencing in the dating market is very similar. But I think that then the solution for that is women stop talking about he's too nice, or be more specific about what you mean when you say he's too nice. Because like I said, I'm going to talk about this. It's not you're too nice. That's not really what it is, but that's what they're communicating, because like I said, women are not good communicators. And so similarly, men stop giving attention to the women that you don't want. Like if you wouldn't take this BBL woman seriously, which I hate to say BBL woman because there are some people who have had BBLs and y'all don't know, because Yet when you think about BBL, it's this extreme Kim Kardashian example, but there are a lot of women going and getting BBLs that
Natural
look
route.
very natural. They look very, very natural. They're not even big butts. They evened out their shape and y'all like it, but y'all don't know that they have it. Similar to how a lot of white women are walking around with extensions, but y'all don't know that they have extensions. So,
Well, so the thing is, and I think that that'll kind of be my theme for this evening is this whole complete and nuanced understanding. So,
mhm,
for instance, one of the things I've noticed when I talk to women, um, they will say something along the lines of, "Me and my friends are really good women. Um, Kathy has her master's in this. Rebecca is a lawyer. Elizabeth is this. I don't understand why they haven't been able to find good men."
mhm,
And my response to women has been, well, that's because you're evaluating yourself and your friends from a female perspective.
mhm,
So um, they actually are good men as opposed to being attractive to good men. Again, this is another paradox. So
mhm,
similarly, whereas attention is women's currency,
mhm,
it's not men's.
mhm,
So just like, I use the whole chess and checkers thing. Like, if you are trying to compete based on how much male attention you can get, you're going to lose because that's not really getting our attention is easy. That's not the game for us. It's the game for you guys because you're so over inundated with attention. So actually getting a woman's attention means you're doing something. But on the flip side, it doesn't apply.
mhm,
But a lot of this communication gets lost because women are evaluating themselves like they would evaluate a man. And men are evaluating women sometimes, men who don't have, who haven't matured in their pimping, are evaluating women based on how they would evaluate a fellow man. And these things don't apply.
Malia, you have thoughts. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think just from my experience and the different women that I've come across is that I think that women tend to lead with what they do or what they have going on to draw a contrast between the women, between the women that men talk about that are gold diggers or that are only superficial. So it's like, hey, look at me, like I got my life going on. Like I can bring something to the table. I'm a multifaceted woman. I think that that's why the career or what they have going on is led with first, just to show that like I have substance. I'm not just out here looking for you to just take care of me and I'm not bringing anything to the table. It's from, at least from my experience, what I've seen.
I think the best way to kind of understand that as a woman is, let's say a man was leading with his hips, or he was leading he was leading with, his ability to cook. Even though those two things might be great, they're not high up on the list for what women are evaluating men for.
Mhm,
So it's not, so for instance, right, it's not that you being a lawyer, you having your master's degree is not wonderful. It's the fact that even though from a female perspective that would be a top 5 consideration, from a male perspective it simply is not, because what we're hiring for is different than what you're hiring for.
What are
I
you
do.
hiring for?
We're so the best way that I like to put it, if it's a man who's ready to settle down, because readiness is a big thing, he's hiring for a potential grandmother to his grandchildren. Like, I
Mhm,
know some people just think about it as like, partner and mother to my children. No, grandmother for so there's a for a man who's ready for that step, and that's why we're not super romantic about it, and we're not, you know what I'm saying, super enthusiastic about it. When a man is ready for that, he's hiring for a potential co-founder to his dynasty, right? So with that being said, obviously he wants you to be intelligent. You have to teach his children. Obviously he wants you to be resourceful,
right? You have to be able to pick up the slack when he falls by the, if something happens, for better or worse. But with that being said, he's not hiring for his reflection, he's hiring for his compliment, right? And I've had too many conversations with women who can rattle off everything that they want from a man, but never actually take the time to consider what that type of man would want from a woman.
So here's my question, and I agree. I understand because I've heard it enough. I understand about men's curriculum is different than what women are looking for because our roles are different. But for men that can't, because most men can't 100% provide for the family financially, shouldn't that be at a higher priority on their list? A woman that does make a good amount of money, since they'll need her to provide for the family?
I think, as a woman, you kind of have two options. You can either help, you can either be a, cooperative, helpmate or helpmeet, or you can be a partner, right? And unfortunately, I wish it was both, but just for the sake of this argument, it's one or the other. And what you pick is going to dictate the caliber of man that you attract, right? If you are more comfortable, and I think if more modern women were honest, they would actually be more comfortable with the 50-50 type of setup, right? Because most modern women do not want to forgo their careers and their own ambitions and the whole nine. However, because of this narrative of you can have it all, they still want this top 1%, top 2% man to be okay with being your partner, as opposed to the CEO of this company and you be the CFO or you be the executive assistant or whatever the case may be. So you really, really have to pick. And it's okay. I mean, if you want a more 50-50 relationship where, both of you guys are at the kids' dance recitals and all that good stuff, then yeah, that teacher is going to be a great man for you. That mechanic is going to be a great man for you. That coach is going to be a great man for you. But the problem is, most women still want the CEO, but they're unwilling to come to the table and compromise with, what his lifestyle is going to be. Yes, he's going to make $1 million a year, but he's not going to be at every dance recital. Are we willing to be okay with that? The answer for most people is no. So men are just saying, okay, you have to make peace with who I am. And if you can't make peace with who I am and the vision that I'm trying to cultivate for us, then you should be able to make peace with another man who might better fit with the vision that you have for yourself or the vision that you think you guys can cultivate for each other.
I agree with that. I think that everybody needs to reconcile what they're willing to accept and what their ideal partnership looks like. And I think that's a question that needs to happen very early on, i.e. first date, because for different people, that's different. Like, is my expectation that you're able to, like you said, come to every dance recital or every soccer game that our children have? And is that compatible with the lifestyle that this man envisions for himself? And maybe he'll be able to come to the grandkids soccer games and whatnot because he'll have retired by then and sold his company or whatever else he got going on. But like, that might not be realistic. Or is my expectation that you're at home every night for dinner? Is that compatible with your lifestyle or where you see your lifestyle going? And I think those are definitely important conversations that people need to be having very soon in the dating process, for sure. Let me see. We have here. It says, Mr. D said, ambitious women compete with men.
I don't agree.
You said you don't agree?
No, I don't. Not at all. All respect to you, Mr. D, but no, I don't, because I think that you can still be ambitious and to use your word and still be cooperative. I think that there are women that still want to advance in life and not feel like I don't think that you should be in any relationship where you feel like you have to compete with your partner. So I think that both of you can be ambitious, and it's not for egoic or selfish reasons. If we're ambitious, it's for our family, and that's what it is. I don't think that I don't need to compete with my husband. Like whatever he brings to the table is going to help advance my life and vice versa. So
Yeah, I feel like when you start talking about competition, that implies that you're on two different teams. And I think a woman or a man, because I don't think we're ready for that conversation tonight, but men sometimes compete with their women too. But I think that that's not conducive for a healthy relationship or a family structure, or like, what was the word you used? The empire? No, what word did you use? Dynasty. Yeah, like that's not conducive for any of that, because a true helpmate, whatever, she will take her ambition and use it to also fuel what you're doing. So when we start talking about inspirational women, that's what they do. Like they are as fueled up about their personal ambitions as they are about yours, because they understand that in helping you, supporting you, it also helps them, because the goal is not individual growth necessarily, it's family growth, or the growth of the dynasty, as Alan says.
I think to Mr. D's point, I think that's primarily why overtly successful women struggle the most with love and dating. And like I always say, life is about trade-offs. Life is about compromises. You can have it all only exists in video games and movies. And part of the reason why these highly successful, highly ambitious women fail in companionship is because number one, women are hardwired to be hypergamous. Women are hardwired to look straight and look up, right? So I mean that literally and figuratively. Most women need a guy who is at least their height or taller. Most women need a guy who makes at least as much as them or more. Most women need a guy who's at least as intelligent or more intelligent, right? And that's just like we just have to deal with that. That's the fact. So even in scenarios where women, pretend that that is not their nature, they tend to be very unfulfilled, very unhappy, and apparently the divorce rate of couples where the woman is the key breadwinner is higher on average than the divorce rate of when it's a more traditional setup. But the other reason that they struggle is because the traits for men and women that help you to be highly successful in the corporate world and in the law firm, they don't translate well inside the house, right? And I think especially in a black context, because according to our history, we as men have been systemically emasculated. So we're even extra sensitive to anything that might come off as extra challenge or extra, throwing my weight around or whatever the case may be. But guess what? If she's a high-powered lawyer, that's how she got partner. And the idea that the vast majority of people are able to come home and turn that off is just not true. Right. So most men would say, oh, well, I might, have sex with her, whatever the case may be. But like long term, nah, this ain't gonna work. So, for those women, I would say, again, going back to the whole compromise thing, Judge Lynn told her, she was telling her story about how she married a man who already had 4 children, and he left his practice to kind of follow her to Hollywood to start I think it was Divorce Court or whatever show she was doing. And she, her ending statement was, "I'm simply happy that he picked me," because she was referring to simps and pick me's and the whole nine. And I think for those type of women, that's what you're going to have to be okay with. You're going to have to be okay with the guy who might be a stay-at-home dad. You're going to have to be okay with the guy who is cool with you making the big decisions. It's cool with you piloting the ship. But guess what? He is not going to fit the mold of what your biology would want. He's not going to fit the mold of what you've been fed since childhood of Prince Charming, who is going to upgrade you. He's not going to be that guy. So with that being said, don't give him hell because he is not living up to something that wouldn't work for you.
Alan, I know that you feel strongly about this this idea that women need and can't see men that are making less than six figures and are shorter than 6 feet and that are not with a six pack or 6 inches, whatever the thing is. And I'm not really getting with it. Which, you saw the poll I did on my Instagram. The women overwhelmingly said that they have both dated someone that did not fit those criteria and would marry someone that didn't fit those criteria.
So to clarify, I don't think, and I agreed with you, I don't think it's a hard and fast rule, right? Like I've done well. I'm not 6 foot tall. I've done better with women before I made six figures, right? So I get that. However, that remains the ideal. That remains the North Star, right? So I'm just starting the conversation from the North Star. I'm starting the conversation from, if you polled 100 women and told them they can create their dream guy, they're going to ask for these things, right? And that is because it's not just because it's fashionable, but it's also because your biology tells you you have a finite number of eggs. Find the best, biggest, the baddest, brightest, most successful gorilla to fertilize these eggs. And we can't run away from that, like that truth.
Yeah, I think for sure, given a preference, if you say both men are similar in character traits and all these other things, but one makes more and is taller than the other, and all other things are similar, yeah, you're going to go with the taller one that has more money for sure. I think similarly, if like men were given two options of a woman and all things were similar, but like one of them had like a really nice body and can cook, y'all gonna go with her probably. I think that, yeah, that's a more attractive, a more desirable option for sure.
Yeah, but even in that example, the woman is predisposed to want a man who's better than her physically, intellectually, financially. I think you can make a concession for emotionally, but most women want a man who's better, right? That's how we get your attention in the first place, or at least perceived to be better.
You're saying you said better physically, like he's more attractive than her, or what do you mean?
No. I'm saying like bigger, larger, stronger, faster,
okay.
Taller. But on the flip side, that's not the consideration for men. Men do not want a woman who's better, right? We want a woman that we like. And that is a key difference, because the idea is that, let's say you're a girl boss and you own a high rise, and you're about to do business with some high powered black man, and he walks in the building, you have the best shot at him, when the reality is your secretary might actually have a better shot, because men's criteria is strictly beauty and how do you make me feel. Women's criteria tends to be what type of status do you have or you perceive to have, and then how do you make me feel.
So do you not think that that's a potential stumbling block, though, the fact that men don't desire or consider a woman being better in something? Because I don't understand, we throw around this word helpmate or helpmeet, but in order for her to help, doesn't she need to have some strengths where your weaknesses are,
Yeah, the best paradigm that I can use to kind of make it make sense is, and I think I brought this up with you, but I was talking to a friend of mine who works in HR, and she works in HR for a big ass company now. But she was pretty much telling me that most people think that the most powerful person at the company is the CEO. She said, actually, the most powerful person at the company is the CEO's secretary.
Oh, yeah, I was talking to Malia about this yesterday.
Right. Like, why is she the most powerful person? Because on the, financial or even the depth chart totem pole, she's at the bottom. But the thing is, she controls his schedule. She knows his insulin medication. She knows when his kids get out of school. She knows his wife's anniversary. Like, she knows her birthday. You know what I'm saying? So like, I would encourage women, instead of vying for this co-founder role, this co-CEO kind of archetype, the women who tend to have the most success with that caliber of man is the secretarial archetype. And I mean, again, I want to be very specific. That caliber of man, like you'll see the CEO go from Facebook to Apple, and he will fire whoever the secretary is and bring his own secretary. You'll see him freaking step down and go to a different position. He'll take his secretary with him. She's even wrapped up into his comp plan. You know what I mean? So like, it boils down to, like you said, filling in his gaps, right? As opposed to simply trying to be his equal or trying to be his, kind of colonel or whatever. But filling in his gaps, and that might be stuff that seems, benign, seems unimportant, but you'll see how that type of man reacts and how that type of man protects and cherishes what you do for him.
What's your thoughts, Malia? You've been silent.
I'm analyzing everything that's being said.
But go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That, I think, to your point, Alan, what you just said, I think is very important, and that's why I did that stream about what are the actual like feminine traits, because I think that a lot of times men specifically, I don't think men require a lot from women, because I think that they've simplified, and I said this I think in our interview with me on the couch, and I think that men in society have reduced women's roles to, like, when you ask a man, like, what is a feminine woman? They're like, she's nurturing. Okay, what else? She's nurturing. Even if you ask certain women, I saw the live stream that you did with a woman that when you asked her, what does it mean to be a feminine woman? All she could come up with was, she's nurturing, she's nurturing, she's nurturing. And so I think that because we don't understand the true capabilities of women, I think that we have very low expectations of them. And so the thought is like, all she is able to do is these very, like you said, like kind of surface level or like benign things. Whereas I think if women actually came up to the standard of all that they're capable of, men would see them as much more valuable than what I think they're currently seeing them as. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're trying to say. I think I'm a guy, obviously, so I use sports analogies a lot. If you are, let's use Kyrie Irving, because before the Jews try to screw up his life, he was one of the top, if not the top point guards in the NBA. Let's say his team had the next pick in the NBA draft, right? And he had a say of who they draft. Would Kyrie encourage the team to draft another point guard, or do you think he would more so want a center?
Probably a center, right?
Exactly, right? And even though they both play basketball, even though at certain times they might have to switch spots or switch assignments, whatever the case may be, we both know who brings the ball up the court. We're not arguing every time the whistle blows who's bringing the ball up the court. I play my position, you play yours. The issue men are having is that women want the Kyries to still want a point guard. And it's like, if I'm that type of man who's covering the protect and provide piece, I need everything that I'm not. So although I will agree with you that men haven't been the most articulate in explaining and elaborating on what nurturing means, I think there is a lot there. I think there's a whole lot there. When I think of nurturing, I think of a multiplier. Right? Men are looking for a woman to multiply what he already has, not to deviate it, not to sidetrack it, but to multiply what he already has. So with that being said, it means that she's coming in with some kind of appreciation for what he's already built or the direction that he's going, and she can offer her her skills, her encouragement, because that's huge. Just a cheerleader, like, just, you got it, babe, my strong man, like, that is huge. And I think if women understand that their power lies in that way of influencing and directing a man versus how his homeboy would or how his coach would, I think they would get a lot further. But again, it starts with a complete and nuanced understanding of how men tick and knowing that certain things will not come off to him in the way that you might intend it simply because that's not what he appreciates, and vice versa, right? Like you'll see women and bitch this, but if I say that, it ain't gonna hit the same, right?
Right.
Versus there's a way you can encourage me, there's a way that you can empower me, make me feel good, especially as a black man, that my homeboys can't do and no coach on the face of the planet can do. But if you're just too busy just trying to be my co-founder, trying to be my equal, trying to be my co-point guard, we're never going to win this game, right? So it's a matter of the woman understanding the caliber of man that she has and fitting in the best possible way to help expedite his growth and his vision. But if you don't want a man with vision, if you want a man who's okay with following your vision, it means you're going to have to step down in your request of the caliber of man that you want. And that's all men are saying. It's just like pick one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree with you, Alan. You know, a lot of times we don't be seeing eye to eye, but I do. I agree with you on that point because I think for women, a lot of the problem that they're having is when you say like, okay, Kyrie Irving, he's going to be like, okay, let's bring a center on. Some men act like a center is a lesser role than a point guard. And not to say like that, I think at the core of everyone, they want to feel seen, valued, and appreciated. And so sometimes when we try to diminish the roles of other people, it leaves them feeling like, okay, well, you don't see me in my current role, so I have to assert myself stronger so that you can see me. So now I need to be someone that you can see is making a difference. So now I need to be the point guard too, so that you'll respect me the way that you respect other point guards, because you think that my position is lesser than you if I'm just resting in that. So I think sometimes that desire to be seen as valuable for like it influences women to embody other roles that y'all don't really want them to embody, but because we weren't recognized in the role that we were embodying, we feel like that's not good enough.
I empathize with that, right? Because male strength is overt and female strength is covert. I talk about, the Bible a lot, even though I'm not the best Christian, but the Bible makes us, it tells a story of Samson, and it talks about Samson being the strongest person in the Bible, right? But he was taken down by a woman. So the reality is, a woman was the strongest person in the Bible. Delilah was the strongest person in the Bible. And not because she was able to overpower Samson, but she was able to seduce Samson. She put that whap on him. He fell asleep. She cut his hair. Right. So the message there is that women's strength is covert. Like when you watch jujitsu, for instance, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, sometimes the most advantageous place to be is at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Now, on the face, that is a paradoxical truth. On the face, it doesn't make sense. But again, women are supposed to be everything that men are not, right? But in this current in this current atmosphere, especially in our community, I think we fooled women to think that their strength is in their ability to everything you can do, I can do better, right? And I think like the Woman King was such an excellent satire, because in the Woman King, the part that people miss because they were so focused on all these badass women, the only reason they existed is because the men kept dying. They were a product of necessity. But it wasn't this idea that they are physically and intellectually superior to men. No, they were a product of necessity. So again, my message to women is your goal should be everything the men are not. Your goal is to be able to fully harness your strength. It's not going to be visible to the untrained eye. And that's actually what even makes you more dangerous. Like the 48 Laws of Power, it talks about the most powerful person in the kingdom is not the man on the throne. It's the shadowy figure behind the man on the throne, because he is insulated by the throne, but he has all the influence of it because he's in the throne's ear. Now, women, that is where your strength lies. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. You could do some shit and you will still have the presumption of innocence. However, you forfeit that if you are committed to showing how good of a man you can be.
No, I understand that. I agree with you in terms of women's strength. I think we embody strength at our core differently, and we should rather. And I do think that that's why I think the power of an inspirational woman is something that people can't even measure for real, because like you said, like the person that's behind the scenes, like in his ear, has so much more influence than the average person, especially if he trusts her, you know. Ray Alexander. Hey, Ray. The main thing men look for in a female mate is intelligence. Brainy mothers increase the odds their future offspring will survive. David Bainbridge. So, Alan, you feel like most men don't necessarily look for intelligence, though. That's not like a thing that they're like. Women, I think, do well. The type of women y'all want, I think they like men that for sure can hold conversation. So intelligence in that way, that make good decisions, that make sense when they speak. You don't feel like that's a consideration that's high on the list for men?
I think any intelligent man is going to look for intelligence, primarily because I have to combine my DNA with yours, right? So I want to give my kids the best odds from an IQ standpoint, from a kind of first stages standpoint. So intelligence is absolutely a consideration. Now, with that being said, intelligence might not look the way that it looks to people on paper. So I think a better word is resourcefulness.
Okay.
Right. I think the most valuable thing a woman can be to a man is resourceful. And it's kind of hard to be resourceful if you're not intelligent. Does that necessarily mean you are speaking the Queen's English? Maybe not. Does that necessarily mean you have a master's degree? Maybe not. Does that necessarily mean you're a captain of industry? Maybe not. But are you somebody that is a good thought partner? Are you a good sounding board? Are you somebody that can help me elaborate on my thoughts and my feelings, and vice versa? Like, is it a good ping pong match when we're engaged with one another, whether intellectually, sexually, the whole nine? So yes, intelligence is a number one consideration. However, we've been taught as a society to consider the window dressing of intelligence. So what school did you go to? What degrees do you have? What job do you have? And that is something that men do not hold super, like somebody like me, I'm impressed by it. Oh, you went to Harvard? That's cool. At the same time, I've met a girl and talked to a girl who went to Harvard. One of the most idiotic people I've ever met. Unwilling to dialogue, thought she knew everything, wasn't even willing to like have rhetorical conversations or arguments. So I think we have to make the distinction between resourceful, a good faith individual, and somebody who just has a bunch of accolades.
I like the thought about resourcefulness, because I think that when people talk about like a Proverbs 31 woman, and if you look it up, that woman is described as being very resourceful. I don't think they use that word in that scripture, but that is what she is, low key. Like if you really dig into how they describe her. Ray Alexander again says, Ray be coming in with the quotes. I know you like Marcus Garvey, Alan. Said intelligence rules the world and ignorance carries the burden. Marcus Garvey, successful men seek women for their intelligence and beauty. Any thoughts, friends?
I want to hear Malia's voice. I feel like we've been hogging the mic. Put us on game, Malia.
Turn up.
I mean, I've just been thinking this whole time as I've been hearing you both speak, is just going back to the original question about, in particular, Black women having a lack of respect for Black men. And so I think in the conversations that we're having right now, it's a little bit wishful, and I'm trying to figure out how do we get to the root of this, because obviously Black men come to the table with a lot of trauma that's been caused by Black women, and Black women come to the table with a lot of trauma that's been caused by Black men. So at some point, we have to give grace to both sides that we don't know, or we're coming to the table with things that we gained from experience or things that we've been taught, by our parents or whatever. So I think that to say like, women should, take on this role in X, Y, and Z, I think that if that is not something that is innate to them, then their partner would either have to be some sort of an expert in that, or there just has to be some sort of guidance to be able to build these type of relationships that you're talking about. Because in the real world, a lot of people don't see it this way, and that's why I guess we have a lot of conflict and divorces and things of that nature, because it's kind of like the double finger pointing back at each other. It's like generational that we see Black men to cheat or to manipulate us, and the opposite for men. And so it's like, when are we going to come to the table and just going to say, I feel this about you, but how can we make our situation different? Like, I just feel like a lot of people just don't know how to lead in whichever role they're supposed to be playing.
I think, for me, the operative word is grace, right? The only reason I'm able to engage in the conversations that I engage in the way that I do is because I've made a habit of listening to people in general that I don't agree with, and women in particular that I may not initially agree with, right? And what that's done is conditioned me to be able to process uh, counterintuitive truths that may not make sense initially to me from a male, point of view, but upon further investigation, like, oh shit, I get why women think this way or feel this way, whatever the case may be, whether it's pretty privilege, whether it's like colorism, the hair stuff. Like, I have to make a habit of listening to women articulate themselves the best way that they can. So on the flip side, I would encourage women who are interested in actually being better partners for men to make a habit out of listening to men do the best job they can to articulate themselves, as opposed to what we see currently is a wholesale dismissal of men as the morally, emotionally, and sometimes even intellectually inferior of the species, and especially of the race, right? And because of that, the paradigm tends to be fixed at this place of men would be better men if they became more like women, as opposed to what I'm encouraging people to do, to just listen to men and listen to them try their best. And you also have to try your best to make sense in the best way you can of what it is that we're trying to articulate. So all these podcast bros that we're talking shit about, there are some gems in there that we can pick up as men and as women. But with that being said, once that actual work is done, once I have an understanding and appreciation of the female perspective, you have some working understanding of an appreciation of the male perspective. When we are met with each other, it's not simply just finger pointing or this is how you can be a better version of yourself. It's okay, we can start the conversation with some mutual understanding. One of the questions I ask everybody that I interview is to describe what type of man they would be if they woke up tomorrow as a man. And the reason I ask that question is because most women think that they would be able to do it better than us without considering the unique challenges that we face, the unique expectations that we face, the unique mental disposition that we face. And that question typically gets fumbled because my next question tends to be, what type of son would you want to raise? And those two answers tend to be diametrically opposed, because the man I would want to be is, yeah, I would want to go and, sleep with different women and do my thing, this, and that. But I would want my son to be respectful and, court women and take them on $300 dates and things like that without having to appreciate his perspective on the matter. So I would just tell women, whether it's Kevin Samuels, whether it's myself, whether it's anybody else that you can stomach, do your due diligence to listen to men. But men who are being honest, not the Derek Jackson motherfuckers, articulate
Mhm.
what it means to suffer from masculinity.
Well, I agree with what you said, but do you think that men would be open to being, I guess, led down this path of being vulnerable and just divulging whatever traumas that they've experienced to their partner? And I ask that because the only little part that I don't agree about with women not being good communicators, I will say that predominantly I believe that women are more willing to dive deep in conversations and to unpack um, whatever is going on with men. And so if men don't know naturally or are not able to tap into that space of them, do you think that they will be willing to be led by a woman to pull those things out, if that makes sense?
Can I jump in on that one?
Sure.
Sure.
I actually do think that if asked, so, and the reason why I think this is because I do think women are so powerful. I really do. I think that I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I asked a man a question and he didn't do his best to try to answer the question. Like, I think that there is a part, like, and Alan, you can correct me or say whatever you want to say about this. I feel like there's a part in men that they want to please women. So, like, if you know that my intention is to get to, and another thing is, I think that men are not used to women asking certain questions, so they get a little excited when women seem genuinely interested in like learning more about them because they're not really used to like their thoughts and stuff being, well, there are some men who are used to that and they, whatever. But I don't know. What do you think, Alan?
So I think first and foremost, to address Malia's question, women, girls even, are socialized to become emotional exhibitionists. There is space created, there's the expectation from a very early age. And I would even say there's a psychological disposition as well for women to be open and willing and enthusiastic communicators. The same is not cannot be said for men. So I think we need to start the understanding of like we ain't come up the same because we weren't socialized to be ready to do the same things, right? Whether in youth or whether in adulthood. So we're not coming to the table with the same perspective on openness. The best way I can help women understand what it is from our perspective, our emotional vulnerability is sacred in the way that your vagina is to you. So just like most women are not enthusiastic about giving it up on the first date, or even if they do, they probably won't even enjoy the experience. Their takes, whether you subscribe to Steve Harvey's 90-day rule, whether you say, okay, babe, let's go to the clinic and both get checked, whether you require a relationship first, there's something that has to happen for you to get to the point where you're comfortable to engage a man sexually. That is the best way I can explain what our emotional vulnerability is for us men, right? However, the consideration that I have to give a woman in not forcing her to ready herself to engage with me sexually prematurely or when she's not ready, that same consideration is not shown to us. Because the expectation for me is that I should be just as open to Kiana as Malia was last night. Not understanding that you were socialized to be like that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's y'all's norm. So I think if men were shown a little bit of grace in these expectations, I think we would see more open, especially considering how some women you know, because you can't beat us physically, you'll weaponize certain things against us later on. Sometimes, uh, uh, and I'm not just saying bad women too, like good women as well, like in their rage, in their reflex, whatever, they might weaponize something that was really sacred to us, similarly to how a man can weaponize a woman's sexuality. So if we had these considerations, I think men might become over time, because this doesn't happen overnight, more willing to open up as you guys would like to see us do.
So all I would say to that is I think that that's totally fine and I respect that. But I would say if a man is not ready or willing to open up, then I think that that should be communicated. So it can't be a thing where it's like it's obvious that something is wrong with you and it's bothering you and you're just like it's nothing. There's nothing wrong. And I can obviously see it. Now it's something different if you say I'm going through something but I'm not ready to talk about it right now, or I don't feel comfortable, whatever. Then I'll give you the space, and then whenever you're ready, then let's talk. But to me it just seems like if you're going to say that you want to be in a relationship with someone, I would just think that you would give the courtesy to say that, and instead of just like blocking it that there's nothing wrong. Like I don't know, that just feels very
But
like
do you
inauthentic.
remember when? Do you remember when Kevin Samuels went viral for like the 50th time because he told, or he said on his show, if you're not willing to have sex, don't go on a date. And I think
I
he
didn't
said,
watch
don't
it
go.
a lot, but sure.
Yeah. No, he came out with a statement. He said, if you're unwilling to have sex, don't go on a date after 5 p.m. And people lost
Hmm.
their minds.
Hmm.
And I think that is very similar to what we're kind of alluding to here, this sense of like um, entitlement, right? Like I am not entitled, whether even if we're married, I am not entitled to your vagina. I'm not. It's
Hmm.
when you're ready. It's when you're in the mental space, physical space to offer that to me, right? And I'm not even entitled that you have to even articulate that, oh baby, I'm not in the mood. It's just once I start and you shut it down, it is what it is. But
Hmm.
again, with that being said, if women still maintain their entitlement to our vulnerability, and even if I'm not ready to expand on what I'm feeling, whatever the case may be, or I need time to work it out, there is still the burden of proof is on me to communicate that to you, because I'm giving you, so I'm robbing you of something that is owed to you. I think that's the issue men are having. Like
I
you
no.
should go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Sorry. I don't think that, well, at least from my perspective, I don't think that it's an entitlement. But my thing is, if there's something clearly wrong with you, you don't have to tell me specifically what it is. But for you to just say, like, I'm going through something, I'm not comfortable to talk right now, then okay, I'm gonna get off the gas and I'm gonna let you do that. Because if whatever you're going through, if we're in a union, partnership, collaboration, whatever, if whatever you're going through is affecting the relationship, just as if whatever I'm going through is affecting the relationship, then I think that the other person should know that there's something wrong. It's not even, it may not even be about you. It may be something else going on in the world, but at least we've identified there's something wrong. Okay, cool. Come to me when you're ready. But to just say, no, I'm good. Like,
Yeah, and I feel like it's easier to have grace for someone when they at least say that. Because when you say, "Oh, nothing's wrong with me," no, then it's like, okay, well, women know when something is not right. That's the intuition part of a feminine woman. Like she knows when something is not right.
I'm so glad you said that.
So if you say it's nothing, but she knows that it's something, her mind, this is game, y'all. Her mind goes to the worst possible scenario because you're not being honest about something that she already knows is true.
So, you know, in my experience, since I learned about love languages, I've been a fan of it because it's made my life really easy, or a lot easier. I'm not gonna say really easy, a lot easier. And one of the things I found is amongst the top two love languages with most women, it's words of affirmation and it's
Mhm.
quality time. Those seem to come up a lot. And with men, it tends to be physical touch, right? Um, so with that being said, I think just based on that, we can draw the conclusion that most women need verbal communication, whereas most men don't. Now, with that being said, the issue that I have personally is that um, we should err on the side, or we should always err on the side of accommodating the woman. Meaning that even if I'm not prepared to verbally communicate yet, I
Mhm.
needed some time to step away, whatever the case may be. Um, you are still owed a verbal communication. And I think if we're going to stick with the paradigm of women have intuition, women pay attention to detail, women probably know more about you than you know about yourself. After some time, you should understand your man. You should understand the times where it's good to talk to him, the times where maybe he needs to be left alone, the times where okay, I know you're not in a good headspace. I'm a let you decompress, whatever the case may be. It shouldn't always be him catering to what is going to be advantageous or what is going to be the easiest for you. Sometimes you should understand this man doesn't want to talk right now, but because of my female intuition, because of these mental notes I've been taking about this man over the past 5, 10, 15 years or months, I know what it is, as opposed to running with the narratives in your head and holding him to a female standard all the time. Now, am I saying that communication is not important? I can't say that. That's what I do. I communicate. But with that being said, it would be nice if we can cater to my love languages from time to time, even in conflict.
For sure. I think that that's important. I think I say that. I do think that's women's responsibility to understand her man, get to know your man, understand what, all the things, how, like his behaviors, his habits, how does he act when he's overwhelmed? How does he need to be comforted? What do you say to him to motivate him to, like, I think you need to know all that stuff. I also think men need to know that too. So, like, as simple as it is for a woman to just leave you alone, I don't think asking him to just say, like, I don't feel like talking right now. I need time to process. I don't really think that that's asking for too
Yeah.
much, just to say that I need space right now. Like, why is that so difficult?
Yeah, I don't think that that's too much either. And also, too, I think that to me, I think that that begins to build a somewhat like unhealthy habit. So, like, let's just say if we go with the narrative of the way that you show your discomfort, or if something triggers you, that you just say nothing's wrong or whatever. All right, so
Mm,
we go with that. That's just how I deal with you. So later on down in our relationship, when something's really bothering you and I don't give attention to it or whatever, because I'm thinking like you're going to come to me whenever you want to talk about it or whatever. But there's a particular time when you want me to give you that energy, where you want me to talk or whatever, then that's like a bad habit that's like built, in my opinion. Like, it's not like, to me, I don't feel like that's effective communication. Again, I'm not saying that like you have to be forced to talk to me right now or when I want you to talk to me. I'm just saying let's build healthy habits, because again, if
I,
we're in this
I
thing
agree.
together, it needs to be a healthy habit.
I agree. However, I think what we're still doing is holding men up subconsciously to a female standard.
So you're saying communication is a female standard.
Yeah.
No,
Communicate. I don't want to
no,
talk right now.
no, I'm saying verbal communication is a female standard. It's a female necessity. Men don't have to communicate verbally. And I think if we can at least start with that understanding, we can better negotiate some of the ways that we move through this. Because even speaking from my own experience, the reason why I might not actually say something,
Why?
because I understand that for women, it's not just what I say, it's how I say it. It's the
Right.
facial expressions. It's the micro expressions. And if I'm in a state where I cannot articulate the I'm not ready to talk right now in a way that is going to be palatable, I am creating another problem. Because now it's just not what was wrong with you, is why you had to talk to me like that. Right. Now, again, it goes back to Now again, it goes back to how uh, girls are socialized versus boys. And I would even take it further than that. And even like our biology. Like my daughter right now, if she was a dude, she wouldn't be babbling the way that she does. Like that girl can damn near talk, and she's a year and a half, right? And I've talked to friends of mine or even other women who have sons, and they're like, "Yeah, my son is low key dumb." With that being said, like women, communication is something that you guys have done for a longer period of time. It is something that you guys are adept at, and it's something you guys have a deep and nuanced appreciation for. However, that is not the same for men. And I'm saying this as a man who makes his bread and butter through communication. I'm just trying to express to y'all that sometimes some of those nonverbal things, all right, babe, I see you're in this mood. You know what I'm saying? I see, because we notice patterns, and especially y'all notice patterns, especially if it's somebody you care about. I'm gonna let you calm down. I'm gonna let you do it. I'm gonna take the kids and boom, boom, boom. He'll appreciate the hell out of that because he has to not just mitigate his emotions and his feelings and the world, the external world, threats, and the whole nine. He also has to make sure he doesn't trip you off by saying the wrong thing. So I just would like a world where women had more of an appreciation for our pathology as opposed to simply wanting us to be more like them.
Alan, I really feel like you are discrediting the ability of men to literally just say a sentence that is, I don't feel like talking right now. Like, I just think that verbal communication, I don't think is, yeah, like Stuart is saying, like a man should be able to give a woman assurance. Like, is that not a part of like how I did it was a part of another video, but it was basically saying that I think a very desirable man, he is able to control the temperature in the room. So if you know that as a part of like leadership and everything, that this will help keep us on track because not communicating is a form of communication. So like all of those little things, like just because you didn't say it, we still saw maybe the microaggressions and how you slammed your bag down on the floor or how your face is looking while you're sitting over in the corner watching TV. Like just because you didn't say anything, we still saw all of those things. And that was a form of communication too. But now, because, and I think in this conversation, we're assuming that these two people have been together for a long period of time. When you're just getting to know somebody, I might not know you well enough to know your habits and your patterns. So I need that to understand what your habits are, because I could have just met you a month ago, so I don't know all that about you. I'm still learning you. So you simply saying like, I had a hard day today, just give me some time, I'll follow up with you later. I think that sets the tone, like Malia said, to have more positive interactions moving forward.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, just real quick, all I was gonna say is like I don't disagree with you. All I am saying is that as I have to make the consideration, because, in my experience and also what I'm hearing from you guys is tell me something so my mind doesn't wander, right?
Yeah.
Because my mind is going to put 2 and 2 together and get 57.
Maybe.
I get that. I understand. So in order to cater to that aspect of your pathology, it's better for me to say something. And I would even encourage men, for the most part, bite that bullet and say something. However, for the women who really want to be successful with men out here, sometimes don't make him bite the bullet, is all I'm saying. Sometimes put your fucked up algebra to the side and say, you know what? He needs a little bit of space. I'm gonna give him some space. Now, should that become the standard? No, I don't think it should become the standard. I think we should err on the side of catering to the woman's arithmetics. However, it's nice as a man from time to time to know that our woman knows us and know that our woman is gonna be able to calm herself back down without me having to divert my focus away from the math that I'm doing in my head. That is all I'm saying.
Yeah, sometimes I'm with you on that. Yeah, once you know him, but that's what I was saying. Like in the beginning, you don't necessarily know him to know what's going on. You might just be internalizing it as like something you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're on the same.
Yeah, I mean,
page.
in the beginning, he's not going to be emoting that much, and if he is, you should probably run. If he's already super emotional with you, like, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say two quick things. One, I think that also too that it's not so much from my perspective, not so much of trying to be like annoyance and like asking questions to see what's wrong. But I mean, I think that if you're in a union, it's more of like I'm looking out for you just as I would think that you would look out for me. So it's like, you good? Okay. And if you're not, okay, you need some time. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go do my thing. And I'm looking at like the comments and stuff. And again, for us to try to like reconstruct like these old ways of thinking, I don't think that like every woman is just gonna keep pushing on the gas if you say, I need some time. Like, I think that moving forward, whether you all are in relationships or not, like, let's start giving people the benefit of the doubt, or at least again in the beginning of the relationships or dating or whatever, say, hey, this is how I communicate if you're able to when I'm upset or whatever. Sometimes I just need space. I may say that nothing's going on and I'll come to you later so that it already clicks in my mind when I see you looking a type of way, I'm not going to bother you. But again, if we don't know, we don't know. But we shouldn't just assume that like because I'm asking you this, I'm gonna keep like pressuring you to talk to me where you feel uncomfortable. And like I just don't think that that's like the case all the time. So
I
again,
I
race.
I feel you, and I appreciate you saying benefit of the doubt, because that's all we're asking for, right? Because we understand most men, if you've matured in your pimping, like I always say, we understand that the what's wrong is more about her than you in that moment. It's more about her being able to, relax than really getting to the core of what's wrong with you. Because again, women do 2 + 2 and equals 57.
Not every
So with
woman.
that be for the most part, again, I'm just talking large numbers. For the most part, the testimonies we hear from men, my own personal experiences, that is the rule, right? The exception is the alter, and I've experienced the exception, but the rule remains that most women are thinking the worst possible thing, and that's why they need reassurance in that moment. All
Yeah.
I'm saying is, from time to time, it's nice if the man is given the benefit of the doubt, especially a black man, because I think, our experience in the world is one of you're guilty until proven innocent. And in as much as the external world has low expectations of us, a lot of times those low expectations exist in our house as well. So even our woman jumps to worst case scenario. He must be cheating on me. He must not love me no more. He must this. He must that. He must this. And some reassurance for us would just be in knowing that this woman knows me. She knows how I'm built. She knows my principle. She knows I just need a second. Even if I don't have the words, I don't have the energy, I don't have the disposition to articulate it right now. Because again, like we said, man, that's not our strength. Now I encourage men to work on that, but that's not our strength. So women should come in with an appreciation of, that not being our strength.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. I think we came to a common ground, which makes me happy. I like that. What are your thoughts, Malia? Why you look like that?
I don't look like anything.
Why are we looking?
No, I think that this is healthy conversation. And I think that it starts like real change will start without us blaming each other, pointing the finger at each other, and just really trying to understand each side's perspective, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's my hope. And Alan, I've shared this with you. I think that a lot of people are not used to Black women and Black men having positive discourse that isn't hostile and that doesn't end in two people. Like, there's room for us to all have like grace and understanding for each other's perspectives without anybody having to agree with us or each other, and then it's still cool, like it's still fine. I like this point here that Stuart says. That's why I advocate for men to read the dictionary. Definitely helps the ability of expression. And I think that I mean, I don't know about reading the dictionary, Stuart. I don't know how you go about doing that. That's a lot. But I think that for me, a lot of times, that's where like college had helped me specifically because I was a political science major. And so we did a lot of, me and Malia actually both were political science majors. And we did a lot of like reading. And so I think that men that read are so attractive because they're able to communicate and they have better vocabularies typically, and not just reading comments and things, but like reading real things. If your intent is to be understood, the man often must calculate how to craft verbal and nonverbal communication in order to make sure what's wrong is not mistranslated but comprehended.
To that, I would say you got to give women the benefit of the doubt too. Like, you know, give us a chance to understand without having to overly, you know, explain.
Yeah. And we talked about that a little bit earlier too. I think a lot of men, especially in this space, a lot of men have been hurt. They have felt overlooked, misunderstood, undervalued, underappreciated. And then unfortunately, it's not allowing them to come into new situations with women in a way where they give them the benefit of the doubt. Like the assumption is already that they're all delusional or they're all of these negative things without giving them the opportunity to show you who they are. What do you think, Alan?
I think, you know, I'm not even going to blame women in particular. I think as a society, we don't know how to empathize with men. I think as a society, we don't. Um, for instance, right? Like some people say, we also don't know how to punish women. We're you know, if it's a testimony being given by a guy about how he was, you know, he suffered domestic violence in his relationship, most people, men included, are gonna laugh at him. Oh, you couldn't. I'm saying you can defend just you let this little woman beat you up. Like as a man, you lose if you retaliate, and you lose if you lose. Like if you get beat up by the girl, you lose. If you beat up a girl, you lose, right? And I don't think people really empathize with the precariousness of how we have to move through relationships with women, particularly romantic relationships, because it doesn't matter what actually happened. We're still going to be the bad guy. So a lot of these testimonies that we see from men aren't even like appreciated by most people, especially women. Like the only time, and I think this is why, you know, men find a safe haven on the internet, on YouTube, in the manosphere, because it's the first time where somebody says, "Damn, that's fucked up. Damn, you experienced that? Wow." Because typically the response is, "Well, why didn't you? Well, why did you? Well, why didn't you?" Now, when it's flipped, women call that victim blaming. But the prevailing narrative is that men can't be victims, right? But when we understand the nuances of society and the nuances of relationships and how things work, especially in this country, men can absolutely be victims, and men very often are. So I think, you know, as much as there is a bunch of bad shit that happens on the internet in these male spaces, there's a lot to be learned from these men's testimony. And I think if women could come in with good faith and come in with an open mind and come in with a willingness to really hear men out and really empathize, like put aside what he should have done, shouldn't have done, just like you do with your fellow women, and just empathize with what it was like having a shitty ass mom, what it was like being cheated on by this woman that I showed the world, what it was like to be lied to by society about what women actually want. I think we would be able to really advance this conversation, particularly in our community.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I think it's unfortunate that those conversations seem to only be happening because I don't necessarily hear men's testimonies ever really. I never hear them in a way that's intentional. So there's a difference between sharing your testimony as that and it comes out in the midst of conversation versus like sharing your testimony and that's the intent because sometimes it comes out differently depending on what the intention was. And I think that's unfortunate because the manosphere is full of a lot of men. So it's men listening to men's grievances versus women really being able to receive, which obviously there's women that listen to that content as well. But I think the intended audience is not necessarily getting those things in a way that they are able to receive and that resonates with them so that they can learn from those things. So I do wish that there was more effort to put men's grievances in a mainstream fashion, maybe, so that women can receive
Uh,
that as well.
yes, and I'm trying to spearhead that effort.
Yeah.
However, if we can at least agree on the fact that men and women communicate differently, and because they communicate differently, men's style of communication should not be graded based on a female curriculum. I think that bit of grace can go a very long way, because I think when most women are met with men's quote unquote testimony, instead of the reflex being your brain to start empathizing, your brain starts picking apart, well, why didn't you say it this way?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you make it more palatable for us so we can digest, as opposed to understand? Because here's the reality: I have to sift through women's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
People on the manosphere call it word salad.
Mm-hmm.
People call it, double speak, whatever the case may be. But I have to learn how to speak Venus fluently to be able to articulate myself to the opposite sex, and to be able to understand the opposite sex, because I have an appreciation of, she's not going to say it the way that I would. We just want some of that in return. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that it would be useful potentially for and I think you've talked about doing this. I know I've certainly talked about doing this, providing resources for people, specifically women, I think, so that women in relationships they can start to have more intentional and productive conversations with their men. Because I think that, again, I think a lot of this stuff kind of starts at home, like within relationships. Like the things that you'll do for your woman they far outweigh the things that you would, do for other people if you care about her, obviously. And so I think that it would be helpful to give some sort of guidance so that people can start having these conversations in private in hopes that then they can start to be had more publicly as well so that men feel more comfortable. And I think communication is sort of a muscle type thing where it takes practice and it can be improved upon over time, but it does have to start somewhere.
Mhm. And to your point earlier, that's why I agree with you saying women are terrible communicators, because being able to articulate yourself and being able to understand somebody else articulating themselves are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I'm saying. It's not just about writing; it's also about reading comprehension. Women are great writers. They're not as good at reading comprehension, right? Because they're not considering the author's tone. They're not considering the context of the text. They're not considering the time period, right? So what I see a lot is women who, they know exactly what they want to say and how they feel about it, and they're going to give it to us in the way they would give it to their girlfriend, and I'm supposed to sift through it from a male perspective and understand what I can understand. However, when I'm articulating myself the way that I would to my homeboy, no, it's not going to work, full stop.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, in as much as I'm encouraging and also modeling for men how to better communicate with women, I'm not seeing women model for other women how to better communicate and comprehend men. It's just simply, oh, well, if men would, if men would, if men would, if men would. So the burden of proof still lies on us. And I think it betrays a sense of we got our shit together. We're just waiting on y'all. And I think especially in our community, that is a destructive paradigm.
Alan, I know everybody, I thought this live was going to be 45 minutes because that's how long it'd be. So I know everybody got other things to do. But I think it would be interesting on your channel if sometimes you got men and women, not just you, but like you had men and women sit across from each other and have like intentional conversation. Because what it sounds like you're saying is that women don't understand how to they don't understand essentially like how to have grace for men, how to hold space for men. I think it might be good to start modeling that so that people can see like what it looks like for even two strangers to come into conversation with each other and have empathy or show grace for the other person. I don't know that would make a difference, but I feel like that would be an interesting dynamic to see.
One of the suggestions that I got last week, this guy, he actually mentioned you as well. I think you're in the chat. Rob T, he mentioned you. He said, what if there was like exactly what you just explained. However, myself and another woman acted as mediators.
First of all, I didn't think Rob T liked me, so I'm surprised he even said me.
Right. See, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. As a dude, I know Rob fuck with you, but as a woman, you might not have been able to read that. Nah, he fuck with you.
I did not. I was surprised when I saw him in this chat. I did not think that man liked me.
Rob fuck with you. But so basically, I would be translating to the woman what the guy is trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And a woman who can understand, who is more well versed in male speak, can translate to the man what the woman is trying to say. I think, unfortunately, I don't know if we're at the place yet where just like people off the street can do that. But you know, I'm working on some things. Y'all stay tuned. I'm working on a few things. You know, but we can get there. It's just a matter of grace. And I think, you know, despite some of the issues that I have with this manosphere and red pill community, I see a lot of men who are genuinely and earnestly like, I just want to have better outcomes with women. I just want to understand what the hell she meant by that and why she couldn't see what I meant by this. Whereas I'm not seeing that same space being held on the other side. And I consume female content. I don't even agree with. But the message, the overwhelming message tends to be that men are bad people. And if they could just be more like us, we would get along and we'd be fine because we're already prepared to be everything and more, right? But you have to prove to me this, and that. So all I'm asking for is grace from the female delegation and an earnest attempt to understand men independent of who you wish we were.
Go ahead and drop your mic, Alan. Drop your mic. I wish I had one of those little soundboards I could put some applause in there. I wish. Brian said how many women are in the chat. Honestly, Brian, I don't think there's a single woman in the chat. I don't really have women that seem to consume my content for whatever reason. I think it's all men here.
And that goes back to my point. Women ain't trying to listen. They're not trying to hear this shit.
Granted, the topic was skewed towards, the original topic was, are men prepared to provide for a feminine woman? So it was kind of skewed towards a man, whatever. But yeah. Yeah, but I appreciate y'all so much for being here. I this was my first time having guests up here, so this is exciting for me, frankly, that there are 32 people up here listening at one time. That's
Yeah,
I know,
we bring
Alan.
the hood out. We
I
bring
know
the
that's
hood
light work for you, Alan, but over here, I'm excited about my 32 people. Somebody left, and I get 31. But
out. And
yeah,
you got some super chats too.
I
Shout
know.
out to
I know.
them.
Ray be coming through.
Yeah,
I like Ray. Um,
yeah.
Shout out to you, Ray, for the super chat. And yeah, everybody was so active and respectful. You know, I love a respectful chat room, so I appreciate that. I appreciate you, Alan, for coming on. Although you know you weren't a part of the original program, but I appreciate you regardless. And of course, Malia,
Anytime.
I appreciate you so much for being up here for 3 hours within 10 seconds, even though I told you that this would be 30 to 45 minutes long because that's how long it always is. But yeah, I appreciate y'all so much. This has been a great conversation. Does anybody have any final word? Well, Malia, what's your final word? And then we need to talk. I'll let you do your final word as well. It's probably going to be something about grace, which is good.
I just think that this is wonderful. I'm happy that you both are continuing on the conversation. I think it's very necessary in our community. So I'm happy that y'all are doing this. I support.
We need to talk. You got any final thoughts? Or you dropped the mic already and rolled it under the table?
No, I mean my slogan for We Need to Talk has always been listen, then speak. So as much as I'm a fan of communication, I think the most vital piece of communication is active, earnest listening. And I think if both sides did that better, we would over time we would be in a better spot as a community.
I agree.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. Thank you, Mr. D, for that wonderful question about what my Cash App is. I'll put it in the chat. Here we go. K.W. Yeah, so that's all. I'll be live again on Sunday. So join in. I don't know the topic yet, but we shaking the table. Oh, the new content is shaking the table, guys. We're shaking the table. So this week be expecting some topics. We're gonna get real. You know, it's not everything has intention and purpose to it. We're going to be giving practical steps and solutions because I'm solution oriented. But we're going to talk about the real things that are happening and the real thoughts, the real misconceptions, the real myths. We're going to get to the real root of what's going on. All right. So yeah, I appreciate y'all and I will see you guys next time. Bye.